Chapter 1464. This. I'm not sure about this either. Elder Nangong's face was bitter as he explained helplessly, this is only the second time I've come here. In all fairness, even if it was you, you wouldn't casually tell your family's secret passage to an outsider, right? After all, I'm just here to help. They don't have to show me their family's wealth. Elder Nangong didn't lie about this. In his opinion, the immortal cultivation world was a place where strength was important. Only strength was the standard to measure a person's value. Therefore, Elder Nangong was usually busy with cultivation or in seclusion in the sect. He had no time to care about other things. This time, if it wasn't because the great leader had found him and asked him to help with this matter, and he owed him a big favor, Elder Nangong wouldn't have specially come out of the sect. He didn't expect that he would suffer such a big setback because of Xiaofan. After leaving the sect with the disciples, Elder Nangong followed the great leader's order and came here once. Therefore, he only knew that this place was the young leader's headquarters. After accepting the task here, he went straight to the Burning Sky faction. As for the other situation in this place, he was really ignorant and didn't know anything. Seeing that he couldn't squeeze any information out of Elder Nangong, Xiaofan's anxiety didn't decrease. Instead, it became more intense. However, there was nothing he could do. The anxious Xiaofan simply carried Elder Nangong and walked to the gate of the house. Then, he stared at the empty sign and ordered in his sea of consciousness, "Little Nethery, burn this house for me. Don't let it affect other places." Yes. The flame of the underworld appeared in Xiaofan's palm with a "hoo" sound. Then, it leaped into the air and instantly split into a dozen bluish-purple flames. They circled above the house for a while and then fell down like rain. In an instant, all the houses and buildings in this house were ignited. Although Xiaofan had purposely instructed the fire of the underworld not to burn other buildings, there were still quite a few houses near this house. Moreover, most of them seemed to be empty, because even until the entire house was burnt to ashes, no one came out to take a look, or ran over to extinguish the fire. After the fire of the underworld completed its task and returned to Xiaofan's body, Xiaofan stared at Elder Nangong and pondered for a while. He raised his hand slightly and used his divine sense to quietly place a divine sense imprint on him. In just a breath's time, Xiaofan was done. He looked at the Nangong elder, who did not notice anything, and instructed indifferently, "Forget it. Just by looking at you, I can tell that you are a simple-minded fool. There is no point in keeping you around. Before I change my mind, quickly scram." "What did you say?" I can really go now." "You're not kidding, are you?" Hearing Xiaofan's words, Elder Nangong suddenly froze and asked stutteringly. Elder Nangong had always thought that Xiaofan would vent his anger on him for not being able to find the person. He did not expect that Xiaofan would let him go so easily. For a moment, he was at a loss. "Nonsense, you still don't want to go, right? Why, do you want this immortal to send you off with my flying sword?" Xiaofan directly took out his flying sword and looked at Elder Nangong coldly. He said impatiently, No need. I can go by myself, I appreciate the immortal's kindness. I'll take my leave now, take my leave." Elder Nangong trembled in fear and did not dare to ask anything more. He immediately turned around and fled for his life. In the process of fleeing, Elder Nangong would occasionally glance behind him from the corner of his eyes, afraid that Xiaofan would suddenly change his mind and give him another slap. Only after he had fled for a long distance and saw that Xiaofan still did not make any move, Elder Nangong finally relaxed and hurriedly ran in the direction of his own sect. Xiaofan stared at Elder Nangong's back without moving. His expression was calm and he did not seem to have any strange thoughts. He had already thought about it. Although this old man did not know anything, he could still be considered as a bait. If that so-called young master knew that Elder Nangong was still alive, it was very likely that he would take the initiative to find Elder Nangong to understand the situation. If he could use Elder Nangong to catch this big fish, it would be much more convenient than blindly searching for the other party. Therefore, Xiaochen naturally would not choose to kill Elder Nangong. Instead, he placed a spiritual sense imprint on his body and allowed him to leave on his own. After Elder Nangong had completely disappeared, Xiaochen turned around and left the ruined residence, returning to the inn where Hongzhu was staying. After entering the inn, Xiaochen did not immediately go to his room to meet up with Hongzhu. Instead, he stood at the counter and called for a waiter. "Good day, sir. What can I do for you?" The waiter immediately ran over and asked with a face full of smiles. Xiaochen casually took out a few spirit crystals that he had brought from Burning Heaven faction and stuffed them into the waiter's hands. He then casually said in a seemingly unintentional manner, "It's nothing big, I just have a few questions that I would like to ask you." "Io, sir, you are too polite." The waiter's eyes immediately lit up when he saw the spirit crystals. He hastily received them and stuffed them into his bosom. The smile on his face became even more sincere as he said, "Please do not hesitate to ask. As long as this waiter knows, I will definitely tell you everything I know." Xiaochen nodded slightly and asked, "I would like to ask, have any strangers appeared in your town recently?" "Strangers?" The waiter carefully recalled for a moment before he slapped his thigh and said, "Yes, yes. A few hours ago, an unfamiliar beauty just happened to stay in our inn. That girl was very beautiful, and she looked unfamiliar. I don't think she has been here before." "A few hours ago?" Xiaochen was stunned. Wasn't that Hongzhu? He could only wave his hand, not knowing whether to laugh or cry as he said, "That girl was with me. What I am asking is, have there been any strangers who have been here in the past 1 or 2 months? In the past 1 or 2 months? The waiter blinked his eyes and frowned in deep thought for a while. Finally, he shook his head and said, "There don't seem to be any strangers who have appeared in our town during that period of time. The one who looked the most unfamiliar should be you, is that so?" Xiaochen fell into a somewhat regretful silence for a while before he continued to ask, "Then do you know if there are any relatively powerful forces or clans in your vicinity?" "Oh, there are." "Sir, are you looking for information or are you looking for someone?" The waiter's spirit was roused. He immediately nodded his head heavily and said, "The most famous place in our town is the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce's headquarters in Fallen Leaf Town in the east. I was fortunate enough to go there once before. The place is huge, and it's really imposing. There is." Chapter 1465. Xiaochen saw that the waiter wanted to say a few more words, so he quickly interrupted him and said in a bad mood, "Stop, stop, stop. I'm not talking about the surrounding towns. I just want to ask if there are any big powers in your county. Why are you talking about such nonsense? You're talking about our Yaoxian county?" The waiter scratched his head and thought for a while before replying, "I really don't know what big powers there are in our county. However, there is a town called Floating Spirit Town not far from Yaoxian County. There is a sect called the Profound Cloud Sect in that town. It is known as the second largest sect in the cultivation world and is also one of the best. Other than that, there really isn't anything else." After listening to the waiter's introduction, Xiaochen slowly knocked on the counter. He felt very strange. The headquarters of the young master seemed to be quite big, and with that kind of scale, he reckoned that there were a lot of people inside. How could the people here not know about it? "Sir, do you have any other questions? If not, I'll go back to work." The waiter saw that Xiaochen didn't speak for a long time, so he asked tentatively. Xiaochen thought again and asked, "Then, in your county, or in the surrounding towns, are there robbers or bandits? For example, when a wealthy businessman was about to go out to do business, did he get kidnapped on the way?" "Sir, are you joking?" When the waiter heard this question, he couldn't help but be slightly stunned. He stared at Xiaochen as if he was looking at an idiot. "What's wrong?" Xiao Chen saw the waiter's expression and was a bit confused. Did he ask something wrong? The waiter sighed helplessly and explained, the headquarters of the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce is in the east of Yaoxian County, Falling Leaves Town. On the other side is the Floating Spirit Town where the Profound Cloud sect is located. With two big powers in charge, who would dare to openly cause trouble here? Unless they're really tired of living. Strange, this is really strange. Xiao Chen muttered to himself in confusion. The headquarters of these bandits is located next to the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce. This is equivalent to guarding a big treasure. For them to be able to refrain from causing trouble and instead run to a place hundreds of miles away to rob, this doesn't seem to make sense. Sir, what did you say? What headquarters? The waiter looked at Xiao Chen in confusion. Xiao Chen waved his hand at him, then turned around and walked towards Hong Zhu's room while muttering in a low voice, according to Elder Nangong, even if the bandit headquarters and the Profound Cloud sect don't have any friendly relations, they shouldn't be enemies. Since they aren't being threatened by enemies from both sides, and the size of their headquarters seems to be quite large, they shouldn't be afraid of that Chamber of Commerce. Is there any other reason? The waiter shook his head as he watched Xiao Chen walk away, muttering to himself. He thought that this person was probably an idiot. He took out the spirit crystal and checked it again. When he found that it had not been swapped, he did not pursue the matter further. He turned around and went back to his own business. After Xiao Chen entered the room, he briefly chatted with Hong Zhu and explained the situation to him. After that, he began to use his divine sense to observe Elder Nangong's movements. Sure enough, that guy was doing something different. It turned out that Elder Nangong was not on his way to the Profound Cloud sect. Instead, he had returned to the burnt bandit headquarters and was standing near the original main entrance. Elder Nangong felt somewhat baffled when he saw the ashes and charcoal strewn all over the ground. The last time he was here, there were many people going in and out of this place and it had seemed very lively. But in the blink of an eye, it had become a pile of rubble. He had no idea where the young master and the others had hidden themselves. After wandering around the ruins of the residence, Elder Nangong did not discover anything and could only dejectedly turn around and leave, once again walking in the direction of Floating Spirit Town. What the hell, you're messing with me. Xiao Chen had observed Elder Nangong's movements from the formation just now. He thought that the elder had come back to deliver a message, so he was about to summon his flying sword and rush over. The moment he stepped onto the flying sword, he realized that the old man had left angrily again. He could not help but curse. After waiting for a while, Xiao Chen saw that Elder Nangong was really heading towards Floating Spirit Town and did not cause any more trouble. Feeling somewhat depressed, he could only helplessly withdraw his flying sword and stay in the room to chat with Hong Zhu, intending to wait for the bandits to take the initiative to contact Elder Nangong. In a town not far from the north of Yaoxian County, two young girls with outstanding looks were strolling side by side on the street aimlessly. One of the girls had handsome facial features and exuded a spiritual aura. Although she was wearing the clothes of a Taoist nun, she did not appear old-fashioned. Instead, she had a valiant and heroic air about her, looking like a fairy who had descended to the mortal world. As for the other girl, although she was also quite beautiful, her face was extremely pale, without the slightest trace of blood. Her eyes also appeared somewhat hollow, and the weather was clearly clear, but she was holding a strangely shaped umbrella. If someone were to pay attention, they would discover that her walking posture was also quite awkward and stiff. Fortunately, her long white dress concealed her strange posture, so it was not obvious. Gugugu, as the two were strolling, a strange sound suddenly came from the stomach of the fairy-like girl. Immediately after, her pretty face blushed and she pretended to look around as if nothing had happened. Only when she discovered that no one seemed to be looking in their direction did she relax. The umbrella-holding girl was slightly taken aback when she heard this sound. She took out a few apples and pears from her bosom and softly said in a cold but pleasant voice, "Big Sister Xian, are you hungry?" I still have some fruits that I gathered from the mountains, why don't you eat them first? I'm afraid that we won't be able to find a place to work and earn money so quickly. Don't worry, I'll just eat an apple. You can keep the rest for yourself. Xian embarrassedly smiled and reached out for an apple. She casually wiped it on her Taoist robe and impatiently took a bite, chewing a few times with force. The umbrella-holding girl did not insist. Seeing that Xian only took an apple, she took the other fruits back. Seeing this scene, Xian turned her head in surprise and asked, Xiaoyu, why aren't you eating? There's nothing else on that mountain, but there's a lot of fruits. It's probably enough for us to eat for a few years. You don't have to be so frugal, there's no need for that. That. Big sister Xian, I'm a yin cultivator. To put it bluntly, I'm a living dead, so I don't need to eat to maintain my life. The umbrella-holding girl called Xiaoyu smiled helplessly and slowly walked forward with her head down. With a slightly bitter tone, she said, also, I've tried eating before, but no matter what I eat, I can't taste anything. I don't usually feel hungry either, so I'll leave the fruits for you. Chapter 1466. I'm sorry, I forgot about it. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean it. Xian rubbed her nose awkwardly and scolded herself for touching a sore spot. He was already upset that he had been turned into a yin cultivator for no reason. Why did she have to expose his shortcomings? Why was her brain so bad? It's okay. Sister Xian, don't take it to heart. Xiaoyu didn't mind too much. She smiled and waved at Xian. Her gaze accidentally landed on a signboard on the side of the street. She immediately became spirited. She pulled Xian over and pointed at the signboard. Sister Xian, look. What's that? Xian was eating an apple. When she heard that, she turned around. Her mouth was still stuffed with apple meat. She asked in a muffled voice. It looks like a cultivator's chamber of commerce. Xiaoyu looked at it carefully and said excitedly, it looks new. Let's go in and try our luck. Maybe we can find a suitable job. Dada Cultivator's Chamber of Commerce? What kind of stupid name is that? Xian took a few more bites of the apple and threw away the core. She walked to the door of the Chamber of Commerce and looked inside for a while. After a round of observation, Xian found that there were quite a lot of people in the Chamber of Commerce. The decoration looked quite luxurious, unlike those fake companies in the secular world. After thinking for a while, she nodded and said, okay. Since there's nothing else to do now, let's go and take a look. After making the decision, the two women quickly walked into the Chamber of Commerce. Xiaoyu was still holding an umbrella, which was particularly eye-catching in the room. In fact, these two girls were Li Xian and Nia Xiaoyu, who were teleported from the inner martial arts world. For some reason, they were teleported to a barren mountain and quickly gathered together. At first, the two women were a little puzzled. They didn't know what was going on. They tried to find the whereabouts of Xiao Chen and the others. After looking around, they found that there were only the two of them on the barren mountain. They had no choice but to go down the mountain and go straight to the nearest town. However, when they arrived at the town, the two women were even more dumbfounded. They found that not only could they not find out anything, but even basic survival had become a problem. The common currency used in the immortal cultivation world was spirit crystals, but Li Xian only brought money from the secular world, so she couldn't use it to buy things. Li Xian once wanted to take the money to find a place to eat, but she was scolded by the owner of a restaurant, who threw her out along with the money. As a zombie, Nia Xiaoyu didn't need to eat or drink, nor did she need to sleep. She didn't have any material needs, so she was even worse off than Li Xian. She didn't have anything valuable on her except a weird umbrella. This umbrella could protect yin cultivators from being affected by the sunlight when they went out during the day. It was also the only thing Nia Xiaoyu had brought from the inner martial arts world to the cultivation world. Fortunately, there were many wild fruit trees on the barren mountain where they came from. During the first few days in the immortal cultivation world, Xiaofan basically relied on fruits to fill her stomach. Occasionally, she would get some game to improve her diet. Xiaoyu didn't need to eat or drink to replenish her energy, so she just accompanied Xiaofan silently and put some fruits on her body. As for the place to live, after the first night on the barren mountain, they finally found an abandoned warehouse. After observing for a while, they found that no one came, so they simply lived in it. They didn't expect to live in it for more than a month. During this period, they also wanted to find some suitable jobs, at least in exchange for some spirit crystals to buy food. Xiaofan ate fruits every day for a month, so her face became thinner. Xiaoyu's white dress had become gray, but she had no money to buy new clothes. She could only wash and dry the clothes every night and put them on the next day. Unfortunately, their strength was limited, and they looked like two delicate women. They couldn't find a suitable job in such a short time. There were some rich merchants or young masters who took a fancy to their beauty and wanted to marry them as concubines, but they were all rejected by the two of them. At this time, seeing the newly built De Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce, Xiaofan and Xiaoyu walked into the Chamber of Commerce with the mentality of giving it a try. Anyway, even if they didn't succeed, there was nothing to lose. Seeing the two beautiful women walk into the shop, a young man in the Chamber of Commerce's uniform immediately greeted them. As soon as he walked in front of the two women, the man felt that one of the girls looked gloomy and inexplicably held an umbrella. However, he still plucked up his courage, put on a smile, and asked, "Hello, ladies. May I ask what business you need?" "Business? You can speak English? You're quite up to date." "That. Can you give a brief introduction first?" Xiaofan felt surprised and amused. In the originally quaint town, suddenly meeting such a strange staff member of the Chamber of Commerce made her feel like she was in the secular world. "Oh, of course, no problem. But what's English?" The young man nodded with a smile and said, "Our De Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce is almost omnipotent. There are only things that you can't think of, and there is no business that we can't do. Isn't that a little too much?" Xiaofan curled her lips and said with a little disbelief, "Don't worry, as long as you can pay enough spiritual crystals, you can rest assured that no matter what kind of business it is, you can rest assured that our Chamber of Commerce will handle it." The young man patted his chest and said, "For example, our Chamber of Commerce can help to find people, find a spouse, set up banquets, protect people, settle disputes, and so on. We can even provide a variety of jobs for people who come to seek employment. It can be said that we have all kinds of relevant business." "I see. Then can we see what kind of jobs we can do first?" Xiaofan frowned slightly and asked helplessly. Originally, when Xiaofan heard that the Chamber of Commerce would accept any kind of task, she wanted to entrust them to help to inquire about Xiaochen and the others. However, when she heard that they had to pay, she immediately backed out and decided to ask about the job first. "Of course, no problem. Ladies, please follow me." The young man smiled and nodded. Then, he made a gesture of invitation and led the way to the counter inside. Xiaofan and Xiaoyu looked at each other. Although they were still a little uneasy, they obediently followed behind the young man. After walking to the side of the counter, Xiaofan and Xiaoyu saw that the man greeted another middle-aged man behind the counter. Then, he pointed at them and whispered a few words to them. Chapter 1467. Xiaofan was just about to walk closer to listen to what they were talking about when she saw the young man walking back with two forms with a smile. After handing the forms to Xiaofan and Xiaoyu respectively, the young man said with a smile, "Take it. Fill in this registration form first. It's best to write as detailed as possible so that we can contact you at any time." Xiaoyu held the umbrella in one hand and the form in the other. She lowered her head and looked at the contents of the form silently. "That's it? That's it?" Li Xianer pinched the corner of the form and looked at the young man suspiciously. What do you mean? What else do you want to do? The young man asked with a strange expression. Li Xianer asked warily, You're not going to charge us a fee, are you? After we fill in the form, you're going to ask us to pay a middleman's fee, or give us a set of inferior clothes to pay a uniform deposit? How is that possible? Miss, don't joke around. The young man looked at Li Xianer speechlessly, shook his head, and said, Our de Cultivation Chamber of Commerce's reputation is well known in the cultivation world. We never charge any fees from workers. We're an official direct store, not a deceptive company. If you don't believe me, you can ask around. You're so full of yourself. Li Xianer muttered to herself. She waved her hand and said, Well, that's all. You can go. The young man quietly rolled his eyes and turned to leave. Suddenly, he heard another cold voice, Wait, you can't go yet. What now? The young man turned around angrily, thinking that these two girls weren't here to make trouble, were they? After turning around, the man discovered that it was another girl with a deathly pale complexion who was speaking this time. She was also staring at him with her empty eyes, appearing to be extremely cautious and flustered. Nie Xiaoyu waved the form in her hand and said coldly, You haven't given us a pen to fill in the form. The young man couldn't help but shiver. Only then did he remember that he was talking to Li Xianer just now. As a result, he forgot about this matter. The pen was still in his hand. Taking out 2 pens and handing them to Li Xianer and Nie Xiaoyu, the young man quickly instructed, After you're done filling out the form, just hand it to the uncle at the counter. He'll help you with the other procedures. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first. After saying that, the young man did not wait for the two to answer. He turned around and walked quickly to the door to receive other guests. In his opinion, although these 2 girls were quite beautiful, they looked strange. It was better for him to stay away from them. Li Xianer and Nie Xiaoyu naturally didn't know what the young man was complaining about. They carefully read the registration form and then found a few strangers who didn't look like staff members to ask about the situation of the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce. After a round of asking, the 2 women actually received one-sided praise. Only then did they believe that this place was really not a scam. They registered their identity information, cultivation level, residential address, and so on the form one by one. Then, they returned the form to the middle-aged man at the counter. A Qi refinement stage cultivator and a devil cultivator Yin cultivator. This level is too low. The middle-aged man took the form and shook his head with a frown. Although he didn't know what Yin cultivator was, he knew that devil cultivators weren't strong. This, uncle, we really need a job. Can you help us find a suitable job? Li Xianer leaned on the counter, put her palms together, and begged sincerely. The middle-aged man thought for a while and waved his hand helplessly. There really isn't a suitable job for you at the moment. Leave this information form. If there's a suitable job for you, our people will go to your door and contact you. How about it? Then. All right then. If there's a job, please choose us first. Although Li Xianer was a little unwilling, she could only nod gloomily. She left the Chamber of Commerce with Nie Xiaoyu and walked to the abandoned warehouse where she lived. After walking for a long time, Li Xianer couldn't see the door of the Chamber of Commerce anymore. Seeing that no one came out to ask them to pay any fees, Li Xianer secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that this Chamber of Commerce wasn't a scam. Although the name sounded a little strange, as long as it was legal, it didn't matter. She only hoped that this strange Chamber of Commerce could really help them find a job. When the 2 women returned to the abandoned warehouse, it was already very late. Thinking of the words of the middle-aged man, Li Xianer felt a little annoyed. She simply sat on the ground and closed her eyes to cultivate. Li Xianer felt that if she could successfully break through to the foundation establishment stage, it might be easier for her to find a job. Now that she was stuck in the Qi refinement stage, it was really too depressing. Sister Sienna, actually you're already very powerful. It's all because my strength is too low that I'm a burden to you. Now I can't even find a job. Sigh. Nia Xiaoyu sighed softly and said with a lonely face. In her opinion, the people of the Chamber of Commerce must have looked down on Yin cultivators, so they deliberately didn't give them a job. If only Li Sienna was here, they might be able to find a suitable job. Xiaoyu, don't say silly things. How can you be blamed for this? Li Sienna opened her eyes and gently patted Nia Xiaoyu's hand. She said softly, actually, I thought that the qi refinement stage was very powerful, but after entering the world of cultivation, I found that there are high-level cultivators everywhere. Since the two of us are together, there's no need to differentiate between you and me. Sister Sienna, Nia Xiaoyu was very touched by Li Sienna's words. Just when she was about to say something, she suddenly heard a rumbling sound from Li Sienna's stomach. Li Sienna's pretty face blushed. Only then did she remember that she had only eaten an apple today, so now her stomach was disappointingly protesting. Are you hungry? I still have some fruits here. Nia Xiaoyu took out the fruits from her arms and placed them in front of Li Sienna. After thinking for a while, she said, Sister Sienna, I'd better go to the mountain again and get you some delicious game. You can't eat fruits every day. You have to ensure that you have a balanced nutrition. Although Nia Xiaoyu had the protection of the umbrella during the day, she still liked to move around at night. Now that it was already night, she gradually became more energetic. Chapter 1468. There's no need. I'll just make do with some fruits. Before Li Sienna could finish her sentence, Nia Xiaoyu had already flown out of the window with her movement technique. Seeing this, Li Sienna had no choice but to give up. She smiled helplessly, closed her eyes, and continued to cultivate, waiting for Nia Xiaoyu to bring back some game. After cultivating for a short while, Li Sienna vaguely heard a noise coming from outside. She frowned slightly, opened her eyes, and listened carefully. It seemed that someone was fighting not far away. There were whistling sounds of fists and kicks, and there were also women's shouts. The woman's voice sounded a little familiar. Why did it sound like Nia Xiaoyu's? Li Sienna was shocked. She immediately stood up and released her divine sense toward the source of the sound, preparing to investigate the situation. After a search, Li Sienna found that Nia Xiaoyu had been surrounded by several men in black in the forest not far from the abandoned warehouse. Nia Xiaoyu tried her best to break out of the encirclement, but the men in black did not let her break out of the encirclement. They did not attack her either. It seemed that they were just constantly exhausting her yin qi, and had no intention of hurting her. At this time, Nia Xiaoyu looked a little panicked. Her pale face now looked even more terrifying, and her movements became a little slow. It seemed that she could not hold on any longer. Seeing this, Li Sienna could not be bothered to cultivate anymore. She immediately rushed out of the warehouse and rushed in that direction. After running a few steps, before she reached the scene, Li Sienna saw from afar that Nia Xiaoyu had been subdued by one of the men in black. She saw that the man in black grabbed Nia Xiaoyu, then made a gesture to the others, and directly fled to the west. The rest of the men in black also quickly followed. The group of people shuttled through the forest very skillfully, and soon lost track of them. Li Sienna was very anxious. She tried her best to chase in the direction they left. After chasing for several kilometers, she still could not catch up with them. She could not even see their shadows. Slowly stopping, Li Sienna stomped her feet in annoyance. She was depressed and confused. Where did this group of people come from? Why did they want to capture Nia Xiaoyu? They did not have any feuds with others recently, right? Logically speaking, according to the level of the men in black, it would be a piece of cake for them to capture another person. However, they did not have any intention of turning back to capture her. What was going on? Li Sienna returned to the abandoned warehouse in puzzlement. She couldn't figure out the reason behind it no matter how hard she tried. She didn't dare to practice on her own anymore. She first blocked the broken warehouse door with something and sat in the corner. She spent the whole night vigilantly observing her surroundings, afraid that the men in black would return and take her away. Li Xianer spent the night in fear, but nothing happened. Early the next morning, she ran to the small town with two swollen panda eyes. She wanted to see if there was a police station in the secular world or a government office where she could find people. Li Xianer to find people several times in the town. She to with for her. She to with for with. She, and for. And, for with to, with, for. Li, for, she. She to, li, for with to, for. And. Yesterday, Li Xianer learned from the staff of the Chamber of Commerce that she could spend money to find people. She did not expect that in just one day, there would be one more person she needed to find. Li Xianer, who was penniless, stood on the street and looked around helplessly. She sighed heavily and went back to her residence unhappily. She ate some of the fruits she had left last night to fill her stomach. Then, she sat on the ground in a daze, thinking about what to do next. Knock, knock, knock. While Li Xianer was frowning and worrying, a knocking sound came from outside the door. Before Li Xianer could respond, the sound came again. Excuse me, Li Xianer, are you there? I am an employee of the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce. We have a suitable job recently, and I want to ask if you want to take it. Hearing that it was an employee of the Chamber of Commerce, Li Xianer, who was nervous, was relieved. Just now, she thought it was those men in black who had come back to catch her. Opening the door, Li Xianer saw a man in the uniform of the Chamber of Commerce standing in front of the abandoned warehouse. He was looking around in surprise, as if he thought he was in the wrong place. Huh? Why are you here? Li Xianer took a closer look and found that the person was the young man who received her at the entrance of the Chamber of Commerce yesterday. I am responsible for running errands and entertaining people in the Chamber of Commerce, so contacting the employees is also my job. Seeing that Li Xianer really walked out of the dilapidated warehouse, the young man's spirit was lifted. He immediately took out the contract, handed it to her, and said with a smile, "Look at the contents of the contract. If there is no problem, sign now, and you can start working immediately." Li Xianer took the contract and read it carefully. She felt that it was reasonable. Just as she was about to agree, she hesitated and asked, "There is no problem with the contract, but my companion who was with me yesterday was taken away at night, so now I am the only one who can go to work. That. I want to ask, can you help me find her?" "No problem, finding people is also one of the businesses of our Chamber of Commerce." The young man nodded and answered fluently, "There are several levels of searching for people. If you send ordinary experts to search, each person needs to pay 10 spirit crystals a day. If you ask for more powerful experts, then the search speed and range will be expanded, and the cost of spirit crystals will increase exponentially. This. An employee is missing, and it also needs money to find her?" Li Xianer muttered to herself. After thinking for a while, she waved her hand and sighed softly, "Forget it. If I had so many spirit crystals, would I have to go to work for your Chamber of Commerce? Let's talk about finding people later, I'd better go to work first." When Li Xianer asked this question, she actually still had a glimmer of hope that Nie Xiaoyu had registered with the Chamber of Commerce, so the Chamber of Commerce could help find her whereabouts. She didn't expect that she would still need to pay spirit crystals like usual to find people, so she had no choice but to give up the idea. "Then come with me to the Chamber of Commerce now. You can go to work directly after completing the procedures." The young man didn't care about Li Xianer's previous mutterings. He shrugged and led her to the Chamber of Commerce. Chapter 1469. Li Xianer followed behind the young man in a daze. Originally, she only needed to find out the whereabouts of Xiao Chen and the others. Unexpectedly, when it rains, it pours. Now, even Nie Xiaoyu was captured. At this point, she could only choose to live under someone else's roof for the time being and work hard for a while. After earning enough spirit crystals, she would think of a way to find Nie Xiaoyu. At a place hundreds of miles west of Floating Spirit Town, the young master led a group of people and finally arrived at another branch with Cheng Menjing in custody. After putting down the luggage, the young master had just finished packing his things and returned to his residence. Before he had time to take a sip of tea, Elder Shen came to find him. "Young master, I was sorting out the information we received during the transfer and found a rather important situation, so I wanted to report it to you as soon as possible," Elder Shen said respectfully. Elder Shen had been traveling day and night with the young master for a few days. He originally wanted to sit down and rest for a while and look through the regular information, but he was immediately shocked by a piece of important news. Before he could even sit down, he ran over again. "What's the situation? Why are you in such a hurry? Could it be that Xiao Chen has caught up with us again?" The young master rolled his eyes at him impatiently and poured himself a cup of tea. That's not it." Elder Shen scratched his head awkwardly and explained, "A subordinate here reported that a while ago, the second master sent people to capture a little girl who is a ghost cultivator. She is still locked up in a cell and hasn't had time to be tested. So, I wanted to ask for your opinion and see if you can arrange for a test. If it's suitable, let her go to that place to have a try." "You're talking about the living dead?" The young master wasn't surprised at all. He said indifferently, "I just happened to meet the second master on my way back to my room. He's sending someone to pick her up and prepare to bring her to the laboratory for a comprehensive test. You don't have to worry about this." Okay, then I won't disturb you anymore. Young master, please have a good rest." Elder Shen wanted to take credit, but he didn't expect that the young master already knew about this. He could only smile awkwardly and was about to leave. "Wait." The young master suddenly thought of something and asked Elder Shen, "Have you settled down Cheng Menjing? Remember to never untie the rope on her." "Don't worry, young master. I know what to do." Elder Shen immediately put on a naughty smile and said proudly, "I've already asked my men to lock Cheng Menjing and that Yin girl together. Anyway, netherworld cultivators are all zombies, and they have always looked like ghosts. Before they are taken away, I can scare that little girl Cheng Menjing a little. At the same time, I can also take her spirit down a notch, so that she can be more tactful in the future." Looking at Elder Shen's proud and elated expression after his evil scheme succeeded, the young master reckoned that he must have suffered quite a bit from that little girl, which was why he came up with such a wicked idea. It would be good if he could teach her a lesson. "That's a good idea. Let's do that. Everyone has been busy moving for the past few days, so they must be a little tired. You should rest early too." The young master nodded and waved his hand casually, sending Elder Shen away. After Elder Shen left, the young master wanted to go back to his room to sleep. However, he remembered that he hadn't seen his father since he came back, so he could only sigh helplessly. He changed his clothes and went out again, heading towards the largest room in the courtyard. At the other end of the courtyard, Cheng Menjing was being led forward by a rope by a guard unwillingly. They were led to a simple room. At this moment, Cheng Menjing's heart was filled with anger. After a few days of tiring traveling, her clothes were almost completely covered in dust, and there were a few dead leaves stuck to her hair. Her entire body was soaked in sweat, feeling sticky and extremely uncomfortable. Right now, what Cheng Menjing hoped for the most was a place where she could take a good bath. In the end, after arriving at this courtyard, she was brought here and there, with a few guards changing. She even walked to such a strange place, so she was in a terrible mood. Fortunately, although the guards were not very polite to her, they didn't do anything out of line, so Cheng Menjing could still control herself. However, with her current dirty clothes and messy hair, no one would be interested in her. "Go in, there's something good waiting for you inside." Outside the room, the guard opened the door and pushed Cheng Menjing from the back to the front. After pushing her through the door, he slammed the door shut and called his other companions to take turns to guard her. "Shameless thief, you're courting death. If you have the ability, untie the ropes on me. If I don't beat you to death, my surname isn't Cheng." Cheng Menjing staggered from the push and almost fell. She turned her head and wanted to roll her eyes at the guard, but she found that the door had been closed. She angrily shouted at the door. Who's here?" When Cheng Menjing was throwing a tantrum at the door, a faint female voice suddenly came from the corner of the room. Cheng Menjing was shocked. She didn't expect that there would be someone else in this room. She immediately turned her head back and felt that the entire room seemed to be filled with a cold air. It was as if there was a white ball hiding in the dark corner, and the voice came from there. She couldn't help but shiver. Cheng Menjing gathered her courage and took a deep breath. She walked a few steps in that direction and took a closer look. Only then did she realize that the white ball seemed to be a woman. Moreover, it was a woman with disheveled hair. After a few more glances, Cheng Menjing realized that the woman's face was completely covered by her hair. She couldn't see her face at all. After hesitating for a long time, she still gathered her courage and asked carefully, "Hey, you. Who are you? Are you a human or a ghost? Why do you look so gloomy?" This voice seems a little familiar." The woman in white suddenly muttered softly. She then slowly raised her head and stared at the young girl standing in front of her. After staring for a while, the woman in white realized that although the young girl's face was covered in dust, the outline of her facial features was very similar to someone she knew. She tentatively asked in a low voice, Are you Miss Cheng Menjing?" Cheng Menjing was slightly startled and said with some confusion, I am. Who are you? How do you know me? I'm Nie Xiaoyu. Do you still remember me?" The woman in white forced a smile and introduced herself softly. Chapter 1470. Nie Xiaoyu? Cheng Menjing frowned and thought for a moment. Then, she suddenly realized something and said, "Oh, I remember. You're that cultivator." Seeing Nie Xiaoyu nod, Cheng Menjing immediately became excited and said, "That's great. You're the first person I've seen apart from Xishan Giant Bull since I came to the cultivation world. Are you alone? Have you seen anyone else? Do you know where Xiao Chen is? Why are you here? Were you also caught by them?" Cheng Menjing couldn't wait to ask a series of questions. However, before Nie Xiaoyu could answer the first question, she shook her head and said, "Forget it. We'll talk about these questions later. Help me untie the rope first. I'm going to beat the guard at the door. That guy is so annoying. He pushed me just now and I almost fell." Nie Xiaoyu didn't get up to help Cheng Menjing untie the rope. Instead, she smiled helplessly and said, "Well, Miss Cheng, it's not that I don't want to help you, but we're in the same boat now." What do you mean?" Cheng Menjing was stunned and walked over subconsciously. When she walked up to Nie Xiaoyu and took a closer look, she found that Nie Xiaoyu had also been tied up by the rope with the same strange symbol. She was immediately dumbfounded. Nie Xiaoyu sighed bitterly and said faintly, "And, even if our hands aren't tied up, there's no way to untie this kind of rope, because this rope is actually a kind of magic artifact. It can't be untied by brute force alone. Someone has tried to untie it for me before, but no one succeeded." "What? Someone helped you untie it?" Cheng Menjing was stunned when she heard this. She quickly asked, "Was it someone else from the inner martial arts world? Were they also locked up? Who was there? Did you see Xiao Chen?" "No, those people are the immortal cultivators who were locked here before. They are not from the inner martial arts world." Nie Xiaoyu shook her head and explained simply, "They are all tied up by this kind of celestial device. After I came here, I tried with them for a long time and used all kinds of methods I could think of, but I couldn't untie the ropes. I see. Cheng Menjing looked a little disappointed. She then asked, what about these people you mentioned? I see that you're the only one in this room. Nie Xiaoyu's expression suddenly dimmed. She replied in a low voice, they were taken away by the bad guys outside yesterday and never came back. That. Nie Xiaoyu, I don't know if it's convenient to ask, how did you get caught? Cheng Menjing saw that Nie Xiaoyu was a little depressed, so she changed the topic and asked. Cheng Menjing's excitement from seeing her colleagues had long since disappeared. She also felt sad when she saw Nie Xiaoyu's miserable appearance. Helplessness and depression intertwined in her heart. Nie Xiaoyu's strength was not enough, and her vitality was restricted by the rope. It seemed that she could only hope that Xiao Chun could find this place again so that he could escape with her and Nie Xiaoyu. He didn't know if that guy would be able to track him down in a short period of time and successfully rescue him from the place he had been searching for. I came in with Sister Li Xianer and landed on a barren mountain. Originally, we wanted to find others, but Nie Xiaoyu didn't know the complicated emotions in Cheng Menjing's heart at this time. She briefly recounted her experience with Li Xianer in the small town and how she was caught by the men in black. It seems a little strange. Cheng Menjing withdrew her thoughts. After listening to Nie Xiaoyu's narration, she frowned and stood up. She paced back and forth in the room and muttered to herself, why did they only catch you but not Li Xianer? Even if they want to rely on us to threaten Xiao Chen, wouldn't they have one more bargaining chip if they could catch one more person? I'm not sure about this. Nie Xiaoyu blinked and tried to guess, maybe it was because I was outside at that time, and they didn't see Sister Xianer in the warehouse, so they didn't catch her? That's unlikely. Didn't you say that Li Xianer chased after you later? It's just that you couldn't beat her, so you were caught before she arrived. Cheng Menjing shook her head and denied Nie Xiaoyu's guess. If they wanted to catch Li Xianer, they should have turned back and caught her. This. I don't know. Nie Xiaoyu was also confused. Ever since she was caught inexplicably and locked in this room, no one had come to find her. She asked those cultivators, but they didn't know what was going on. So, at this time, she couldn't figure out what those people saw in her. Strange. It's too strange. No matter how hard Cheng Menjing thought about it, she felt that something was not quite right, but she couldn't figure out the specific reason for a while. She only felt that the other party's actions didn't seem to be logical, but she couldn't find a direction to break through. Miss Cheng, then why are you here? Seeing that Cheng Menjing couldn't think of anything for a long time, Nie Xiaoyu changed the topic and asked, were you also caught by the men in black? Don't call me young miss. It sounds weird. Just call me Menjing. Cheng Menjing was just about to say a few polite words when she suddenly heard the door being pushed open. 2 guards rushed in from the outside. Before the 2 women could react, the 2 guards quickly walked to Nie Xiaoyu's side, pulled the rope on her body, and dragged her away without saying a word. Nie Xiaoyu was completely scared. Her little face was as white as a snowflake. She couldn't help but follow the 2 guards and stumble out of the room. Cheng Menjing was also shocked. When she came back to her senses, the door had been closed, and Nie Xiaoyu's desperate eyes were isolated outside the room. Hey! You stinking bastards, why did you take her away? Hurry up and send her back to me. Cheng Menjing was so angry that she stomped her feet. She shouted at the door, we haven't finished talking yet. Why don't you know the rules at all? Don't you know that interrupting other people's conversation is a very rude behavior? However, no matter how Cheng Menjing scolded, the closed door never opened again. Moreover, the soundproofing of this room seemed to be quite good. She originally wanted to stick to the wall to listen to the movements outside, but she found that she couldn't hear anything at all. After trying several times, it didn't work. In the end, Cheng Menjing could only sit on the ground angrily and stare at the door with her bright eyes. She planned to interrogate the fierce guards the next time they came in. Chapter 1471. In this vast house, the commotion caused by Cheng Menjing was like a pebble thrown into the sea. It only caused a slight ripple and quickly disappeared without a trace. At the same time, in the center of the residence, in the most grandiose room, the young master was sitting opposite an old man with a frown on his face. There were 2 cups of steaming hot tea on the table, and the two of them seemed to be discussing something. The old man looked rather old. Not only was his sideburns white, but there were also many silver strands in his hair. However, his body was very straight, and his eyes were emitting waves of light. From time to time, there would be a soul-stirring look in his eyes. The hand that was holding the teacup was still steady and strong, and it did not tremble at all. If I remember correctly, you should have been staying in the headquarters in Yaoxian Prefecture. Why did you suddenly come here? The old man put down the teacup in his hand, raised his head, and stared sharply into the young master's eyes as he asked expressionlessly. This old man was the young master's father, who was also the great master of the entire bandit group. The mountain bandits that were wreaking havoc in Luxian Prefecture and the arrogant horse bandits in Baxian Prefecture were all subordinates of this group. Their power was almost everywhere in the entire immortal cultivation world. As he rarely showed his face, the great master had always been a very mysterious figure. Apart from a few important figures, no one else knew what he looked like. They only knew that he was an existence that people looked up to. Father, I was forced to come here to seek refuge. I was really forced to do so. I have nowhere to go. The young master seemed to be a little afraid of the great master. He lowered his head and answered gloomily. Usually, in the headquarters, it was the young master who dealt with matters. The big master rarely gave any instructions. Now that he had lost the headquarters and left in defeat, the young master was actually very nervous in his heart. He was afraid that his father would reprimand him in anger. However, if he did not report it, his father would definitely be even angrier. So, after thinking about it, the young master chose to come over and tell the truth. Perhaps he could gain some sympathy. What happened? The great master's expression became even more unhappy. He knocked on the table and asked, "Such a big headquarters was left for you. Why do you have nowhere to go?" "It's all because of those troublemakers." The young master waved his fist fiercely and gritted his teeth as he said, "If that little brat Xiaofan hadn't destroyed the mountain bandits' hideout in Luxian County and the headquarters in Yaoxian County, and the horse bandits' power had been destroyed by that little girl, Cheng Menjing, I wouldn't have fled back here in such a hurry." "What? Even that Nangong guy failed? Looks like this brat Xiaofan really has some skills." The great leader was slightly stunned and looked a little surprised. "That's right. Fortunately, I placed my eyes outside in advance, so he didn't catch me red-handed." The young master's expression was a little distorted as he said fiercely, "Fortunately, I caught that little girl, Cheng Menjing. When I have some free time later, I will definitely torture her and take revenge on her." The great leader was slightly surprised, but his expression quickly turned cold. When he heard the young master's words, he reprimanded him in a deep voice, "Don't think about such nonsense. We have too many things to do. How can we have so much time to play around with a little girl? Yes, I know my mistake. Please forgive me, father." The young master quivered and immediately lowered his head to admit his mistake. His back was drenched in cold sweat. The great leader nodded slightly and didn't reprimand him anymore. Instead, he asked indifferently, "Have you dealt with the horse bandits' headquarters? Although this is only a large branch, you should know that all the important research is carried out in this place. If Xiaofan finds traces of this place, the consequences will be unimaginable. You can rest assured about this. I have already asked people to destroy all the relevant information. All the subordinates have also been transferred here with me this time. No matter what, Xiaofan will not be able to find the location of this branch." The young master immediately nodded and guaranteed confidently, "That's good. Don't worry about it too much. I have other things for you later." The great leader's expression softened slightly as he instructed indifferently, Thank you for your understanding, Father. I will remember your teachings. The young master bowed respectfully. He hesitated for a moment and asked again, that. Father, may I ask if we should send more masters to get rid of Xiaochen? Xiaochen, this brat. The great leader's vigorous and powerful fingers knocked on the table a few times. He murmured with a somewhat dignified expression, as far as I know, Elder Nangong is already at the peak of the mysterious ascension stage. I didn't expect that even he, yes. I don't know what kind of luck Xiaochen has. His cultivation actually improved so fast. The young master continued the conversation and sighed sincerely. I guess we can only send mountain opening stage masters over this time. By the way, we should also clean up the Burning Sky faction. Those bandits took away all the storage in our mountain bandits' hiding place. We can take them back to make up for our recent losses. From the young master's point of view, now that the horse bandits and mountain bandits could no longer be dispatched, their income would definitely decrease a lot. Therefore, they had to take back all the resources from before. He had completely forgotten that those spirit crystals and heavenly treasures were also snatched from others. However, to the young master's surprise, the great leader did not immediately agree to his suggestion. Instead, he rubbed his temples and pondered for a while. Then, he slowly shook his head and said, "What you said. I'm afraid it won't work for the time being." The young master was stunned. Before he could ask, the great leader explained, "It's not that easy to invite mountain opening stage masters. There are only a few of them in the entire immortal cultivation world. If we want to invite them, we will definitely have to pay a huge price. Moreover, our main focus is on collecting spirit crystals now. It's impossible to spend a lot of effort to deal with Xiao Chen's group. But, if we keep Xiao Chen alive, it will definitely be a big problem. He is already a mountain opening stage master now. If we don't get rid of him as soon as possible, I reckon there will be endless troubles in the future." The young master said with a face full of worry. The young master's heart was filled with hatred towards Xiao Chen. He couldn't wait to get rid of this fellow immediately. Even in his dreams, he wished that he could kill him. However, he had no way to deal with it now. Although the young master's organization was very large in scale and usually had sufficient connections and resources, what the organization lacked the most was a powerful immortal cultivator expert. Chapter 1472. Usually, if there was anything that required the help of high-level cultivators, their organization could only rely on their accumulated relationships and ask the experts of various sects to help them. They even had to pay a huge amount of spiritual crystals. Therefore, if they encountered a person like Xiao Chen who was not weak and was a thorn in their side, they would also have a headache. If they could, they would recruit those who could and try their best to avoid conflict. Get rid of him, we definitely have to get rid of him. I also want to get rid of him, but not now. The great master could naturally understand the resentment in the young master's heart, but he still warned him sternly. Seeing that the young master still could not accept it, the great master sighed and added, "You don't have to be too anxious. As long as we get that material and accomplish that big thing, we will have a very powerful voice in the immortal cultivation world. When that time comes, it won't be us asking the experts of other sects to come out and help us. Instead, it will be the sects who will rush to please us and beg us to do things for them. Father, I think you better reconsider." The young master wanted to continue arguing, but before he could finish his sentence, the door to the room was suddenly pushed open. Both of them turned to look, only to see an old man in his 60s with a face as red as dates and eyes as large as copper bells walking in. He bowed to the first master and reporting to the first master, "I've found a suitable cultivator candidate. I've just checked her thoroughly, and there's nothing wrong with her indicators. She's just right to go to that place to carry out the mission." "Very good. It was the right decision to leave this matter to you. There are results so quickly." The great master's expression softened a little when he heard this, and he nodded in satisfaction. This old man in his 60s was the second master of this organization. He was usually in charge of trivial chores and daily communication with various sections. Occasionally, he would also help the great master with some important tasks. "Thank you for your praise, great master, that." The second master first accepted the praise with a smile, then his expression changed and he stammered a little awkwardly. "What's wrong? Did you encounter some problems?" The great leader glanced at the second leader, waved his hand and said, "If you have any questions, feel free to speak. Right now, the most important thing for our organization is to focus on obtaining that material. Everything else can be put aside for now. It's like this. Although this EN cultivator meets the requirements in all aspects, her EN cultivation level is very low. She hasn't even started cultivating. She hasn't even entered the Qi refinement stage yet. If we just go there rashly." The second leader shook his head. He didn't finish his sentence, but his meaning was already very clear. The great master pondered for a while, then said with a frown, "Theoretically speaking, the poisonous gas in that place should be ineffective against EN cultivators. Wasn't that the reason we were looking for EN cultivators back then?" "That's not what I meant." The second in charge hurriedly explained, "The poisonous gas may be ineffective against her, but with her insignificant strength, what if there are other dangers inside? Moreover, if you were to encounter other competitors, you might be beaten to the ground in a single move." "Other competitors?" "Sure enough, there are still others who want that material." The great leader raised his eyebrows, stared at the second leader, and asked, "Have you found out who the other party is?" Hearing that someone else was also going to take action, the great leader's expression was not surprised at all. After all, everyone would covet a good treasure. If the material wasn't hidden in an extremely dangerous and unpredictable place, perhaps all the major sects would have been fighting for it. According to reliable information from my subordinates, the Huanchun Pavilion has also found a suitable candidate recently. However, I don't know why they haven't taken action to capture that person. I don't know what they are waiting for." The second in charge touched his nose and said firmly, "So I think we must take advantage of this opportunity to get there first, lest they get the first prize." "The Huanchun Pavilion," the great leader repeated with a somewhat solemn expression. His fingers lightly tapped on the table, as if he was thinking about something. The second in charge waited for a while. Seeing that the great leader didn't move, his expression suddenly changed, and he put on a gloomy face. He said in a gloomy tone, "How about, we secretly send someone to the Huanchun Pavilion to find out who the person they are targeting is, and then follow the clues to kill the suitable candidate first." "Nonsense. Are you born in the year of the dog? How can you change your mind so easily?" The great leader immediately glared at the second leader and berated him mercilessly. "The Huanchun Pavilion is the #1 sect in the immortal cultivation world. Their strength and foundation are extremely deep. How can the current us shake them? If the other party counterattacks with full force, we won't get any advantage either. Maybe both sides will have to fight to the death. At that time, won't we be a joke to other sects for nothing?" "Ha, great leader, please don't be angry. I was just saying it casually. Just treat it as a gust of wind blowing past your ear and listen to it. If you feel that what I said is wrong, please don't take it to heart." After being scolded, the second in charge immediately put away his gloomy expression and put on an embarrassed smile as he spoke awkwardly. When the young master saw this scene, he couldn't help but feel angry and amused. He thought to himself that the second in charge was indeed a dog-faced person. He changed his expression faster than flipping a book. It was a waste for him to grow so old and be so shameless. It would be a pity if he didn't become an actor. The first leader was a little speechless as he unhappily glanced at the second leader. After pondering for a while, he finally opened his mouth and said, "How about this? Make a trip to the medicine room later and take out all of our precious pills that can raise one's cultivation level. Properly raise that EN cultivator's strength. Take out all of them for her to use." The second in charge was stunned. He suspected that there was something wrong with his ears and confirmed again. Yes, as long as it's a high-grade pill that can raise cultivation, give it to her. Remember, you must raise her cultivation level as soon as possible, no matter the cost. Let her have enough strength to go to that place, and let her live safely in there. The boss nodded his head and instructed in an extremely serious manner. It was clear that this matter was extremely important to him. Okay, then I will do it immediately. Wait for my good news. The second in charge cupped his hands and accepted the order. He excused himself to the young master and immediately turned to leave. On the left side of the house, in a large messy room, Nie Xiaoyu was sitting on a chair anxiously. The chair was cushioned comfortably, but Nie Xiaoyu wasn't in the mood to enjoy it at all. At this moment, her mind was blank. She didn't know what kind of fate she would face. Chapter 1473. Nie Xiaoyu couldn't figure out why these people suddenly kidnapped her. She had been tied up here for a few days and nights. Other than doing some inexplicable tests on her and asking some strange questions, they didn't talk to her anymore. Even if she tried to ask questions, no one answered her. Now all the guards had left the room, and she was the only one left in the room, or rather, she was the only dead person left. Just when Nie Xiaoyu was at a loss of what to do, the door suddenly opened, and second master walked into the room quickly. He quickly moved a chair from the side and sat in front of Nie Xiaoyu. After looking at her for a while, he said, "Your name is Nie Xiaoyu, right? Just now, through our inspection, we confirmed that you are a genuine Yin cultivator. Although I have indeed heard of the existence of people like you. I don't know if you are still considered a human, but it is still quite rare in the immortal cultivation world. I am indeed a nether cultivator, but I have never harmed anyone. Why did you capture me?" Nie Xiaoyu was a little flustered. She bit her lower lip and asked cautiously. "Harm anyone? That's not the point. It doesn't matter even if you are a great bandit or a homicidal maniac. We captured you this time because you are of some use." Second master shook his legs and said lightly. Use? Nie Xiaoyu blinked her eyes in confusion and said uncertainly, "No one has ever said that I have value. Are you mistaken? I am not a master. I said you have value, so you have value." Second master waved his hand impatiently, stared at Nie Xiaoyu, and said straightforwardly, "You just said that you are not a master, but I can help you become one. In exchange, you have to promise us one thing. What do you think? Help me become a master?" Nie Xiaoyu was even more confused. She asked with a puzzled face, Didn't you just say that you have never seen a nether cultivator? How do you know how to improve the strength of a nether cultivator?" No, it's not to improve the strength of a nether cultivator." Second master raised a finger, shook it, and said slowly, "I can help you improve your internal strength to a higher level, so that you can look down upon many people in the cultivation world. Correspondingly, after the improvement, you have to do something for us." Internal strength? What was that? I've never heard of it before. Nie Xiaoyu's mind was filled with question marks. She was completely confused by the term that the red-faced old man had mentioned. What? You haven't even heard of internal strength? Internal strength was the division of cultivation in the cultivation world. They are divided into qi refining, foundation establishment, gold core, and so on. The second in charge rolled his eyes at Nie Xiaoyu and snapped, "How do you usually cultivate?" How could he not even know such a simple thing? Did he just come out from the deep mountains? What a waste. Nie Xiaoyu secretly curled her lips. She came from the secular world and didn't know much about the world of cultivators. Besides, she had been cultivating with old ghost Shishan all this time and basically didn't have access to high-level things. It was normal that she hadn't heard of them. Then, if I agree, what conditions do I have to agree to? Nie Xiaoyu collected her thoughts, looked at the second in charge, and asked coldly, what are you going to do? You know, I'm just a zombie. To be precise, I'm a dead person, so it's impossible for me to do those things. Although Nia Xiaoyu's voice was always as cold as a pearl, there was a slight fluctuation in her tone at this time. Fortunately, she was already a zombie without any vital signs, so there was no blood flow in her body, and her face was always as pale as a piece of paper. Otherwise, the second in charge would see that Nia Xiaoyu's face was actually as red as a lantern. Because of what had happened during this period, Nia Xiaoyu subconsciously thought that she was going to be offered to a powerful man as a concubine, or sell her body in exchange for some benefits. What are those things? What do you mean? The second in charge was slightly stunned and didn't quite understand what Nia Xiaoyu was implying. No, nothing, I just want to know whether what I'm going to do will be dangerous. Nia Xiaoyu found that she seemed to have misunderstood the second in charge, so she shook her head quickly and asked in a different way. The second in charge didn't take it seriously. He nodded and said in a deep voice, "Of course there will be danger, but as long as you can successfully improve your internal strength to the nascent soul stage, and then carry out this task according to the way I told you, you should be able to keep your life and escape unscathed. If you can agree to this condition, I can even consider making an exception to let you join our Heaven and Earth Association." Heaven and Earth Association? Is that the name of your place? Nia Xiaoyu repeated it in puzzlement. Wasn't this Heaven and Earth Association the name of a sect in a novel in the secular world? Why did it appear in such a place? There was also that nascent soul stage. It sounded very powerful. Would he be able to break through to that stage? However, Nia Xiaoyu was still a little speechless at the second in charge's words. She was already a dead person, so why did he say, "Keep my life and escape unscathed"? It seemed that this guy in front of her didn't know what cultivation was at all. That's right. The second in charge didn't know what Nia Xiaoyu was complaining about. Instead, he straightened his back proudly and said proudly, "Our Heaven and Earth Association is very powerful. We have branches everywhere in the world of cultivation, and we have powerful resources. If you choose to join our Heaven and Earth Association, you won't regret your decision today. Haven't you heard of this saying? If you don't know the Heaven and Earth Association, it will be in vain even if you become a mountain splitter." I see. Nia Xiaoyu hesitated for a while, then gritted her teeth and nodded in agreement. Okay, I agree. Nia Xiaoyu's thinking was very simple. She felt that since she and Li Xianer came to the world of cultivation, they had run into a wall many times. Because the people here only cared about cultivators and didn't care about demonic cultivators, and because their strength was very low, they were always bullied and didn't dare to fight back. Now that she had this opportunity to improve her strength, she might be able to win more respect from others in the future. Nia Xiaoyu had even planned to start looking for Li Xianer, Xiao Chen, and the others after her cultivation level increased. Chapter 1474. You're really straightforward. Well, come with me. Let's get some elixirs first. The second in charge gave Nia Xiaoyu a thumbs up, untied her, stood up, and walked out of the door. In the second in charge's view, since Nia Xiaoyu was already a member of Heaven and Earth Association, there was no need to tie her up. Besides, he had to supervise her cultivation at any time and any place in the future, so it was more reassuring to keep her by his side. After all, this matter was specially ordered by the leader, and no mistakes could be allowed. Wait a minute. Nia Xiaoyu suddenly thought of something and shouted hurriedly. What's wrong now? Are you going to go back on your word so soon? The second in charge turned his head and stared at her unhappily. No, I have an acquaintance who is also locked up in your cell. Can you release her as well? She is very smart, and maybe she can also cultivate with me and improve her strength. Nia Xiaoyu thought of Cheng Menjing, who was still locked up, so she wanted to ask if she could help her. An acquaintance? You mean the little girl who was just locked up today? The second in charge frowned and asked. Yes, her name is Cheng. Just as Nie Xiaoyu was about to introduce her, she was interrupted by the second-in-command. No, she doesn't meet the requirements of our mission. Besides, I didn't catch her, so I can't let her out yet. Then why was she captured? Nie Xiaoyu was slightly taken aback and asked tentatively. That's not what you need to worry about now. The second-in-charge's face darkened, and he refused to answer Nie Xiaoyu's question. Looking at her disappointed face, he thought for a while and said, "But you don't have to worry. Our Heaven and Earth Association still has rules for prisoners. As long as that little girl doesn't do anything out of line, we won't do anything to her." That's good. Please make an exception for my friend, Senior, and arrange it more appropriately for him. Nie Xiaoyu was a little helpless, but she had no choice but to give up. Otherwise, if she persisted, she might lose her chance as well. She had to wait until she became stronger and had more power to speak before rescuing Miss Cheng Menjing. Nie Xiaoyu was a timid person, and she didn't dare to take the initiative to make requests. In addition, she had no experience in dealing with strangers, so she immediately gave in after being threatened by the second-in-charge. In fact, as long as she thought about it carefully or probed a little more, she would understand that the second head keeper actually valued her quite a lot. If she could take this opportunity to insist on some conditions that were not too harsh, the second head keeper would basically agree. Unfortunately, Nie Xiaoyu didn't realize this, so she missed this good opportunity to fight for benefits. Well, I see. I'll help you inform him. You don't need to call me Senior. Just call me second-in-charge. Seeing that Nie Xiaoyu was obedient, the second-in-charge nodded with satisfaction. He took the lead to leave the room and walked in the direction of the pharmacy. When they arrived at the pharmacy, the second-in-charge took the lead to walk in. At first glance, he saw that the pharmacy manager was sleeping soundly with his head buried in the counter. The second-in-charge immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. Wasn't it obvious that he was humiliating himself? He simply lifted his leg and kicked the pharmacy manager to the ground. He shouted angrily, "Damn it, are you a pig? Are you here to look after the pharmacy or to sleep?" The pharmacy manager rolled on the ground after being kicked. Just when he was about to flare up, he heard the second master's roar. He immediately shivered in fear and stood up at the fastest speed in his life. He bowed his head and apologized, I'm sorry, second master. I've been busy for a whole day. I didn't pay attention, okay. I don't have time to listen to your explanation. Hurry up and take out all the top-grade elixirs in our pharmacy." The second-in-charge waved his hand and interrupted the manager's explanation. The pharmacy manager became spirited and hurriedly asked for instructions respectfully. "Okay, no problem. What kind of elixirs do you need? Or you can just tell me the name of the elixirs and I'll help you find them right away." Although the steward also saw a young girl standing behind the second head, dressed in white and looking ghostly, at this time, the second head was angry, so the steward didn't dare to ask anything. He didn't even dare to look at her again. How would I know the name of any elixirs? In any case, take out all the high-grade medicinal pills that can quickly improve your cultivation without any side effects. Oh, that's right. Also, take out some high-grade healing medicinal pills. Put them all on my account. The second leader knocked on the counter with a heroic look and ordered loudly. Take them all out? The manager was shocked. After hesitating for a long time, he said weakly, Second in charge, the elixirs stored in this warehouse are the trump cards of our Heaven and Earth Association. If we take them out, we can sell them for tens of millions of spirit crystals. If you only want a few kinds, I can still make the decision. But if you want to take them all at once, it's a bit difficult. I have to first ask for instructions from the great leader. Ask for instructions, my ass. Before the steward could finish his words, the second leader was furious. He swung his arm, raised his hand, and slapped the steward hard on the face. The slap made the steward spin on the spot. "The great leader asked me to take these elixirs," the second in charge impatiently shouted. When he saw that the manager was still dizzy and didn't say anything, he glared at him and said, "What? You still don't believe me, boy? Why don't you take me with you and we go find the great leader to confront him?" "No. No need, second in charge, you're too serious. How could I dare not believe you?" The pharmacy manager was about to cry. In this short period of time, he had already been kicked and slapped. If he insisted on asking for instructions from the great leader, wouldn't he be beaten again? "Then why don't you hurry up? I'm in a hurry here. I don't have time to waste with you." The second in charge roared again with full strength. Please wait for a moment, I'll go get the elixirs now. I'll be done right away." The manager responded with a sullen face. Then, he covered his red cheek with his left hand and took a big empty wooden box with his right hand. He walked to the shelf where the elixirs were placed and carefully identified the effects of the elixirs. Then, he put all the elixirs that the second in charge mentioned into the wooden box. Nia Xiaoyu, who was following behind the second in charge, was so surprised that she couldn't close her mouth. She secretly wondered how powerful this world was. Just these elixirs could be sold at such a high price? Don't tell me they're running a pharmacy. Chapter 1475. Nia Xiaoyu heard from the manager who had been beaten into a pig's head that the elixirs in this place could be sold for tens of millions of spirit crystals. Previously, she and Li Xiener had asked about the salary of the workers in the Chamber of Commerce of Immortal Cultivators, and the salary was at most a few spirit crystals a day. The difference was simply too big. Surprised and curious about the background of the Heaven-Earth Association, Nia Xiaoyu left the pharmacy with the second in charge. She took a lot of elixirs and moved into a suite. The second in charge first taught Nia Xiaoyu the basic situation of the world of cultivation and explained the division of strength. Then, he ordered her to cultivate in this room for the next few days and not to go out casually. If there was any situation or need, she should tell him in time, and he would find a way to solve it as soon as possible. The second in charge lived in the outer room, ready to monitor Nia Xiaoyu at all times and ensure her food and clothing. To put it bluntly, he was like Nia Xiaoyu's senior nanny. Although this kind of thing was very trivial, it was what the second in charge was used to doing. Since the great leader had ordered him to devote all his efforts to this matter, he would do his best to complete it. Nia Xiaoyu knew that the second in charge only lived in the outer room and would not come in to harass her, so she did not say anything more. She stayed in the room obediently and prepared to start cultivating. At this time, Nia Xiaoyu also had a belief in her heart. She wanted to raise her cultivation level as soon as possible so that she would have a greater say in the Heaven-Earth Association in the future. At that time, she could find a chance to understand the background of the Heaven-Earth Association. In addition, Nia Xiaoyu also wanted to understand the reason why Cheng Menjing was caught. If possible, it would be best to release Miss Cheng, and then ask the Heaven-Earth Association to help find the whereabouts of Xiao Chen and the others, so that they could reunite as soon as possible. Thinking that she had so many things to do, Nia Xiaoyu felt a heavy burden on her shoulders. She did not dare to delay any longer. She calmed down and immediately began to cultivate. In an inn in Yaoxian County, Xiao Chen was leaning against a chair in boredom, chatting with Hong Zhu from time to time. Xiao Chen had been bored to death over the past few days. Every day, he would use his divine sense imprint to observe Elder Nangong's movements. However, he discovered that ever since the old thing returned to the sect, he had not left at all. He had been hiding in his room all day, as if he was studying his injuries. The reason for this deduction was because Xiao Chen discovered that Elder Nangong had secretly brought back a lot of heavenly treasures from the pharmacy. There were all sorts of medicines, such as healing wounds, restoring cultivation, and even aphrodisiacs. However, no matter what medicinal herbs Elder Nangong used, the broken meridians in his body did not show any signs of improvement. After trying for a while, he almost gave up. He stayed in his room and circulated his mental cultivation method, hoping that one day his injuries would start to improve. At first, when Xiaofan discovered this situation, he could not help but laugh inwardly. The injuries he inflicted on others were basically impossible to cure. This elder Nangong was simply indulging in fantasy. Xiaofan had originally planned to wait patiently for the young master to contact elder Nangong. In his opinion, the entire headquarters of Yaoxian County had been burned to the ground by him, so the young master would definitely not be able to sit still and ask elder Nangong about the situation. In this way, he would be able to obtain more information without any effort. But unexpectedly, the young master seemed to have disappeared from the world. There was not the slightest movement from him, and besides eating and sleeping, elder Nangong only drank medicine to treat his injuries. It seemed that he had no intention of contacting the young master at all, wasting several days of Xiaofan's time. "Husband Xiaofan, how much longer do we have to stay here?" Hongzhu sat on the bed, swinging his legs as he yawned and asked, "Besides cultivating, all I do is eat and sleep. It's really a bit boring. Has your matter been resolved yet? Who knows what's wrong with the young master? It's already been so many days, but he's still completely ignoring elder Nangong." Xiaofan also frowned helplessly and said, "We can't keep waiting like this. We can't keep wasting time on this kind of thing. We have to make some changes." At this thought, Xiaofan could no longer sit still and stood up to change into a light set of clothes. Seeing this, Hongzhu immediately jumped down from the bed. He excitedly pulled Xiaofan and asked, "Husband Xiaofan, where are you going? Are you going to fight? Take me with you." "I'm not going to fight. I'm going to the Profound Cloud sect," Xiaofan explained as he changed his clothes. "I want to directly find elder Nangong and ask him about the situation. Since I can't find any new clues, I might as well go look for him myself." "You don't have to follow me. Why can't I go with you?" Hongzhu immediately pouted. She shook Xiaofan's sleeves and said, "It's so dangerous for you to go alone. I'm worried, so I'll go with you. I can scare that old man Nangong so that he won't dare to lie." "Little Hongzhu, it's not that I don't want to take you with me, but you also know that the Profound Cloud sect is the second largest sect in the cultivation world. If something happens to me there, it'll be easier for me to escape alone. If I still have to take care of you when the time comes, both of us might die there." Xiaofan shook his head and patiently advised. "But..." Hongzhu was somewhat swayed by Xiaofan's words and a look of hesitation appeared on his face, but he was also a little unwilling. "Be good and listen to me. I reckon that I'll be back soon. Just stay in the room and wait for me to come back." Xiaofan gently kissed Hongzhu's forehead, turned around and opened the door. Caught off guard, Hongzhu was kissed. His face flushed red as he rubbed his forehead. In his heart, he recalled that Xiaofan had never treated him so gently before. For a moment, he forgot to insist on following him. He casually said, "Then. All right then. You have to come back soon." After comforting Hongzhu, Xiaofan left the inn and flew in the direction of the Profound Cloud sect on his flying sword. This time, other than asking elder Nangong for information, Xiaofan also wanted to investigate the strength of the Profound Cloud sect. After all, this was the second largest sect in the cultivation world. If he understood their situation, he would be able to have a rough gauge of the overall level of the cultivation world. After flying in the air for nearly half an hour, Xiaofan's flying sword finally arrived in the sky above the Profound Cloud sect's territory. After hovering in the air for a while, Xiaofan discovered that the security of the sect was very tight. Regardless of whether it was the periphery or the interior, there were a large number of guards patrolling the area. The defense could be said to be watertight. Chapter 1476. In order to hide his whereabouts and not be discovered, Xiaofan set up a camouflage for himself and the flying sword in advance. If someone inadvertently looked up at the sky, they would only see a circling bird and would not notice anything strange at all. After making all the preparations, Xiaofan gradually lowered his altitude and circled around the profound cloud sect. The profound cloud sect occupied a very large area. Trying to find a person inside was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Furthermore, Xiaofan did not dare to release his divine sense to its maximum range. He could only carefully explore every area. Fortunately, he had just broken through and his essence was abundant, so he did not feel the pinch when he exhausted it. After searching for a long time, Xiaofan finally found Elder Nangong's retreat in a 2-story building at the back of the profound cloud sect. After determining the direction, he drove the flying sword and prepared to fly there. Just as Xiaofan took a breath, before he could control the flying sword to glide, he suddenly heard the warning voice of the Elder Heaven Ancestor in his mind. "Xiaofan, are you stupid? Just take a look and observe. Why do you want to go down and take a look? Do you think this is a market or a street garden? You can stroll around whenever you want." Hearing the voice of the Elder Heaven Ancestor, Xiaofan suddenly stopped the flying sword. He touched his nose and smiled embarrassedly. "I just want to look for Elder Nangong. It should be fine, right? Moreover, you see that I have been very reserved. I did not release my divine sense wantonly. I have also made sufficient preparations to disguise myself. I only plan to ask him some questions and leave. I don't want to fight with anyone. Do you think it is up to you to decide whether to fight or not? Hurry up and go." The Elder Heaven Ancestor urged again, "I am not scaring you. With your cultivation, if you go down and are discovered, you will die. There are many mountain opening stage experts in the sect. I just took a casual glance and found a peak opening stage expert in charge. If you go, you won't be able to come back." It turned out that when Xiaofan had just arrived in the sky above the profound cloud sect, Elder Tian had already discreetly investigated the situation of the sect. Seeing that Xiaofan was really planning to enter the sect, he spoke up to stop him, in case Xiaofan did something stupid due to a moment of carelessness. "All right, I'll listen to you." Xiaofan hesitated for a moment, but his rationality still won over his impulsiveness. He secretly memorized Elder Nangong's residence and immediately flew into the sky. He controlled his flying sword and quickly left the profound cloud sect. As he flew out, Xiaofan did not forget to ask the Elder Heaven Ancestor for advice. "Elder Heaven Ancestor, I'm actually quite curious. Now that I'm at the mountain opening stage, what's the next stage? According to my current cultivation speed, how long will it take for me to break through? You are only half a step into the mountain opening stage. You haven't reached the mountain opening stage yet." The Elder Heaven Ancestor first attacked Xiaofan, then solemnly warned, "The next stage after the mountain opening stage is the earth opening stage. However, you have to be honest with me. Once a cultivator breaks through the mountain opening stage, they will enter a big realm. It is different from the previous foundation building pill." Not the same? Do I have to change my cultivation method? Or is the method of cultivation different?" Xiaofan asked with some surprise. "That is not necessary. Normal cultivation is the same as before. You just need to cultivate patiently. However, once you reach the peak of each stage, if you want to continue to break through to the next stage, it will not be like before. You can't just rely on hard work to succeed. You must rely on external forces or encounter some kind of fortuitous encounter. Therefore, don't think about it for the time being." The Elder Heaven Ancestor lightly explained. External forces, fortuitous encounter. Xiaofan muttered a few words, then smiled and said, "Elder Heaven Ancestor, aren't you my external force and fortuitous encounter? With you here, why would I be afraid of not being able to break through? You have a glib tongue. You should hurry back and seize the time to cultivate. Break through to the mountain opening stage first." The Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice was very relaxed. Obviously, he was very happy with Xiao Chen's flattery. After laughing and scolding, he did not say anything else. When Xiao Chen saw that the elder heaven ancestor was not willing to let go, he could only helplessly shake his head and smile bitterly. Then, he drove his flying sword towards the Yaoxian county. However, thinking about it, Xiao Chen felt that the elder heaven ancestor's words were indeed reasonable. He was currently only half a step into the mountain opening stage. Moreover, if it was not for Hong Zhu's urgent help, he was afraid that he would not be able to reach this stage. He would have already lost his life. If he immediately thought about breaking through to the earth opening stage, he would really be biting off more than he could chew. He had to first plan how to work hard to improve his level. Just as Xiao Chen left the Profound Cloud sect and set off for the Yaoxian county, in a secret room of the Profound Cloud sect, a middle-aged man wearing a gray robe suddenly opened his eyes. This middle-aged man originally seemed to be in a state of cultivation. His entire body was covered in a majestic yuan qi. The fluctuations of his aura constantly spread in all directions, even creating visible ripples in the air. He looked very powerful. After he opened his eyes, he frowned slightly and immediately released an earth-shattering divine sense that enveloped the entire sect. Although the divine sense was very overbearing and arrogant, the other people in the sect seemed to be unaware of it and were still immersed in their own matters. "Oh, strange, it seems that a spirit beast flew through the air," a cold voice echoed in the secret room. The middle-aged man used his divine sense to carefully examine every corner of the Profound Cloud sect. He did not even let go of the sky. He swept his eyes back and forth several times while muttering a few words. After half an hour, the middle-aged man did not seem to find anything. There was a faint trace of regret on his face as he slowly closed his eyes again and re-entered the state of breaking through to the earth opening stage. Xiao Chen was unaware of what was happening behind him. He returned to Yaoxian County without a hitch. However, he did not return to his room in the inn. Instead, he sat down on the roof of the inn and stared at the people coming and going on the streets below. He was in a daze. Elder Heaven Ancestor, what should I do next? On the way back, the more Xiao Chen thought about it, the more depressed he became. Right now, his strength was weak. If he did not level up as soon as possible, it would be very difficult for him to advance. What do you mean? Elder Heaven Ancestor pretended to be stupid and did not understand what Xiao Chen was saying. Of course, how to increase my level. Xiao Chen's expression collapsed and he said helplessly, "You can see that with my current strength, I cannot make a living in the immortal cultivation world. You are too weak as a master. Now that your disciple has reached this point, you should at least lend a hand, right?" Chapter 1477. Brat, you only know how to covet my things. Elder Heaven Ancestor was not as dispirited as Xiao Chen. He only snorted, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Hee, why else would I call you my master?" Xiao Chen smiled and asked impatiently, "Do you have any powerful magic tools that you can give me? Or perhaps pills that can increase my cultivation quickly? As long as they can increase my strength, I won't have to worry too much about doing things." Elder Heaven Ancestor could not do anything about Xiao Chen's pestering, so he could only give him some advice. "You are only at the half-step mountain opening stage now, so your strength is still not enough. You should hurry up and consolidate your cultivation to the first level of the mountain opening stage. When the time comes, I will guide you to explore an ancient mystic realm. I hid some good things there when I was alive. After you obtain them, you can inherit my mantle and become stronger in no time." "Oh? There's such a good thing. Why didn't you say so earlier?" Xiao Chen was overjoyed as he agreed. He did not forget to grumble. If he had known that Elder Heaven Ancestor had hidden treasures, he would not have wasted so much time when he first entered the immortal cultivation world. He would have focused on dual cultivation with Hong Zhu every day. When he obtained the treasures of Elder Heaven Ancestor, he would be able to run amok in the immortal cultivation world. I originally wanted to tell you after you reached the mountain opening stage. Who knew that you would be so useless? Even now, you are only at the half-step mountain opening stage. How can you blame me for that? Elder Heaven Ancestor naturally saw through Xiao Chen's thoughts. He did not hold back at all and pointed the spearhead at Xiao Chen. Let's not care about these details. What kind of treasures are you hiding? Xiao Chen scratched his head and changed the topic awkwardly. You will know when the time comes. Elder Heaven Ancestor did not answer directly. Instead, he gave him a serious warning. But I will say the ugly words first. Don't have too much hope for the treasure. Even if you get it, you cannot be too arrogant and domineering in the future. Although the immortal cultivation world is not big, there are still many old monsters who live in seclusion. If you alarm them, the consequences will be very troublesome. You should understand. I know. I am not a 3-year-old child who has to compete with others. Xiao Chen helplessly shrugged and responded. Now that he had a direction to go, Xiao Chen's confidence soared and the gloominess in his heart was swept away. He turned around and entered the inn, returning to his room and preparing to dual cultivate with Hongzhu. Unfortunately, the heavens did not go according to his wishes. Although Xiao Chen and Hongzhu continued to dual cultivate day and night, his progress was still very slow. He was still far from successfully stepping into the mountain opening stage. On the contrary, Hongzhu's cultivation level soared after dual cultivating. In just a few short days, he had already broken through to the nascent soul stage. This made Xiao Chen even more gloomy. No matter how he thought about it, he still could not figure out what the problem was. On the other hand, Hongzhu's cultivation level soared after dual cultivating. In just a few days, he had already broken through to the nascent soul stage. This made Xiao Chen even more gloomy. No matter how he thought about it, he still could not figure out what the problem was. As long as you are happy. Xiao Chen absent-mindedly nodded. This time, he did not make any progress in their dual cultivation, so he was already feeling a little anxious. This is all thanks to your help. Elder sister was able to break through to this stage in such a short period of time. Hongzhu keenly sensed Xiao Chen's absent-mindedness. She simply raised her head and used her gentle and charming eyes to look at him. She teased him in a very playful manner, say, "How should elder sister thank you? Why don't we change the taste tonight and play a little more exciting?" "Oh, do as you wish." Xiao Chen was still absent-minded and casually agreed. He did not have any interest in Hongzhu's seduction. His entire mind was filled with thoughts about the treasure hidden in the secret realm that the Elder Heaven Ancestor had mentioned. Right now, he had to consolidate his cultivation to the first layer of the mountain opening stage as soon as possible. Only then would he be able to explore the secret realm. However, the results of his cultivation over the past few days had been minimal. It was as if a plate of steaming braised pork had been placed in front of him, but it had been covered by a glass cover. Although his desire to eat it was extremely strong, he was unable to break through the cover no matter what. "What's wrong? Why do you look a little unhappy?" Hongzhu's hot face was plastered to a cold butt. He unhappily curled his lips and muttered, "Could it be that because elder sister's work is not good enough, so you are unable to raise your spirits?" Although Hongzhu also understood that once a man and woman passed the period of passionate love, the interest in life would gradually cool down, wasn't Xiao Chen a little too cold? It had not even been a month. Foolish Hongzhu. Could it be that in your eyes, I am a shallow man who only thinks with the lower half of his body? Aren't you looking down on me a little too much? Xiao Chen came back to his senses. When he saw Hongzhu's fuming look, he knew that he had neglected her feelings because of the matter regarding the treasure. He pinched her soft cheeks apologetically and teased her in a faint voice. All right. It's nothing. Elder sister, I just feel that you seem to have something on your mind. Why don't you tell me and see if elder sister can help you solve it?" When Hongzhu saw that Xiaochen wasn't tired of him, the clouds on his face parted as if he had seen the sun. His expression instantly brightened up. He gently leaned on Xiaochen's shoulder and mischievously stretched out his finger to tease his earlobe. From time to time, he would even blow air into his ear. "You're really stupid and adorably stupid. How could there be such an easy matter to solve?" Xiaochen affectionately scratched Hongzhu's nose. After thinking for a while, he simply explained, "Didn't I make a trip to the profound cloud sect a few days ago? After that, I discovered that there were many mountain opening stage experts there, so I didn't dare to rashly go in. I just wanted to come back and dual cultivate with them to raise my cultivation, but in the end..." Sigh. Xiaochen gently sighed. Although he knew that Hongzhu wouldn't be able to help, it wasn't appropriate for him to watch her worry blindly. Thus, it was better for him to tell her about it so that she would feel more at ease. He would just treat it as someone he could confide in. "Oh, so that's how it is. Isn't that simple? Of course elder sister has a solution." Hongzhu nodded in sudden realization. She rolled her eyes and suddenly said with a smile, "Stop fooling around. How could you possibly have a solution?" Xiaochen naturally didn't believe her, but when he saw the confident look on Hongzhu's face, he felt that she didn't seem to be joking. Chapter 1478. The method is very simple. Hongzhu puffed out his chest, snapped his fingers, and said with a mischievous smile, "Tomorrow, we'll go and lure a virgin back together. Then, you and her will do it, gather her primordial yin, and then take the opportunity to cultivate. Wouldn't that increase your progress?" "Pfft! What kind of rotten idea is this? Forget it, I'll think of a way myself." Hearing Hongzhu's strange idea, Xiaochen almost spat out. He couldn't help but roll his eyes, and could only ask for help in his sea of consciousness. "I say, Elder Heaven Ancestor, do you have any good ideas? Something that can help me quickly advance to the first layer of the opening mountain stage?" "Of course there is a way." Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice came out unhurriedly. Why didn't you say so earlier if there was a way? I've wasted a few days' worth of effort." Xiaochen's vision darkened, and he almost cried. Was Elder Heaven Ancestor playing with him? "You didn't ask at the time." Elder Heaven Ancestor chuckled, and then said seriously, "All right, I won't joke around anymore. You reached the half-step opening mountain stage while unconscious, and you don't have enough understanding of the stage to begin with. You should spend a few days to properly consolidate your foundation, familiarize yourself with this stage, and then proceed to the next step." "This. All right, then what's the method this time? You wouldn't be like Hongzhu, and want me to find another woman to do it with, right?" Xiaochen laughed bitterly, and asked in an extremely sincere manner. "Wishful thinking." Elder Heaven Ancestor said sarcastically to Xiaochen again, and then returned to the main topic. "Let's follow the same routine as before. Boil the natural treasures into a medicinal soup, drink it, and then combine it with exercise to cultivate. However, the medicinal ingredients you brought from the inner martial world are not enough. You'll need to get some medicinal ingredients from the immortal cultivation world to complement it. This way, the effect will be more obvious, or it will be useless." "All right, it's time to take medicine again." Xiaochen mocked himself, then asked, "Then please give me a list of the herbs you need from the world of cultivators this time. Tomorrow, I'll go to the Burning Heavens sect to get it. Anyway, they've already planted quite a lot of heavenly treasures. Last time when they destroyed the mountain bandits' lair, they even seized their warehouse. I reckon that they've profited quite a lot. It should be enough for me to deal with for a while." "That won't do. Previously, when they were counting the treasures of heaven and earth, I had already carefully looked through them. The level of the Burning Sky faction's items is still too low. They might not be able to deal with your prescription this time." Elder Heaven Ancestor mercilessly rejected Xiaochen's suggestion. Xiaochen frowned. Before he had time to ask, Elder Heaven Ancestor immediately added, "You can ask that kid Nangong to get some suitable heavenly treasures. No matter what, the Profound Cloud sect is the second largest sect in the cultivation world. The people there are all experienced. They must have a lot of good stuff hidden." After that, Elder Heaven Ancestor made a list in Xiao Chen's mind. On it, there were 7 or 8 kinds of rare herbs that Xiao Chen had never heard of or seen before. Flaming Mist Lotus, Tranquilizing Demon Emperor Flower, Blood Star Leaf Grass. After silently reading the herbs on the list, Xiao Chen was at a loss. He could only shake his head slightly. The names of these herbs sounded very imposing. It seemed that only a large sect like the Profound Cloud sect was qualified to have them. Last time when he was counting the treasures of heaven and earth in the Burning Sky faction, he really hadn't seen or even heard of these things. Yes, these are the things on this prescription. Hurry up and ask Nangong for them. Elder Heaven Ancestor said lightly. Just as Xiao Chen was about to agree, he suddenly remembered something very important. He quickly said, "That's not right, Elder Heaven Ancestor. Last time, you said that the Profound Cloud sect was full of experts and told me not to provoke them. Now you want me to go find Nangong. What should I do? Do I have to go directly to their sect to visit them? What's so difficult about that?" Elder Heaven Ancestor's tone was as simple as eating a meal. "Can't you just use the Divine Sense imprint to communicate with them?" Using the Divine Sense imprint to communicate? Xiao Chen scratched his head. What kind of new skill was this? He had never heard of it before. It is to pour your mental energy into the Divine Sense imprint on Nangong's body and then make a sound. The Yuan Qi will naturally transform the sound waves and transmit them to the imprint before sending them out again. Elder Heaven Ancestor slowly explained. So that's how it is. This is really quite convenient. Xiao Chen nodded in realization. After a pause, he asked, "Then why didn't you tell me this before? If I had known, I wouldn't have gone to the Profound Cloud sect." I really forgot about this." Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice sounded very innocent. Xiao Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shook his head and wanted to say something else, but was interrupted by Hongzhu. "Husband Xiao Chen, what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about when you can go find a suitable girl tomorrow?" Hongzhu saw that Xiao Chen was in a daze and couldn't help but wave his hand in front of his eyes as he asked jealously. "What are you thinking about?" Xiao Chen rubbed Hongzhu's head and said with a smile, "I just thought of a more suitable method, so I fell into deep thought and didn't have time to talk to you." "Alright, go to sleep first. I'll be busy for a while. I'll come find you when I'm done." Then I'll wait for you in bed." Hongzhu saw that Xiao Chen seemed to have found a way and no longer pestered him. He obediently nodded and kissed him on the cheek before washing up and going to sleep. After the surroundings had quietened down, Xiao Chen began to release his divine sense and mental energy. Using the divine sense imprint that he had placed on Elder Nangong's body, he quietly transmitted his voice, "Hey, Elder Nangong, I'm your exalted immortal Xiao. If you hear me, hurry up and say something. This exalted immortal has something important for you to do." At this moment, in a room in the Profound Cloud sect not too far away, Elder Nangong had already fallen asleep. That familiar voice that had suddenly sounded in his ear scared Elder Nangong so much that he immediately rolled off the bed. He wrapped himself in the blanket and looked around with wide eyes. Strangely, the room was empty and he couldn't find anyone. Elder Nangong was a little puzzled and he couldn't figure it out. That voice just now had been too real, so real that he couldn't believe that it was a dream. "Alright, stop looking left and right. This exalted immortal was the one who called for you. If you know what's good for you, hurry up and wake up and reply." Just as Elder Nangong was beginning to believe that he was having a nightmare and that was why he could hear someone talking, that extremely familiar demonic voice rang out in his ear once again. This time, Elder Nangong was in a clear-headed state so he could immediately tell that the other party was the one he had seen before, the the one who had been injured by him, Xiao Chen. Chapter 1479. Then. Are you exalted immortal Xiao? Elder Nangong shrunk his neck and mustered his courage to ask. However, after asking, he was a little confused. He looked around again and especially looked outside the door and window. There was really no one there. He could not help but be confused. What kind of unique magic treasure did exalted immortal Xiao have? How could he transmit his voice from such a long distance? Well, why are you asking so many questions if you know? Without waiting for Elder Nangong to finish his question, Xiao Chen's fierce voice rang out again, "Go to your sect's pharmacy right now and get some of the medicinal ingredients I reported to you. Bring them over to me as a tribute." Hiss. Elder Nangong realized that Xiao Chen was actually talking to him. He could not help but gasp. When had he ever seen such a strange phenomenon? In the immortal cultivation world, didn't one need to use a voice-transmitting talisman? He was not even holding a voice-transmitting talisman. How did Xiao Chen do it? Was there a more convenient way? Why are you still standing there? Hurry up and get a pen and paper. Write down all the treasures I need. Xiao Chen urged impatiently when he saw that Elder Nangong did not move for a long time. Elder Nangong shivered in fear. After regaining his composure, he hesitated for a while and asked softly, "Exalted immortal Xiao, that. I want to ask, how did you transmit your voice? Why didn't you use a voice-transmitting talisman or something?" Hearing Nangong's body temperature, Xiao Chen was slightly stunned. He asked the Elder Heaven Ancestor in his divine sense. Nangong's reaction seems a little strange. Isn't he an immortal cultivator? Doesn't he know that the divine sense imprint set up with mental energy can not only monitor but also transmit? Pfft, what do they know? The Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice was full of disdain. These people are too weak. Immortal cultivators like us are pure immortal cultivators. We belong to the Orthodox sect. Their kind of broken immortal cultivation has been thousands of years ago. Their original complete immortal cultivation techniques have long been lost. What's left are just broken scrolls. They are basically imitations. They are not comparable to us at all. Oh, I see. I understand now. Xiao Chen nodded in understanding. Then, he gathered his divine sense and mental energy and transmitted a message to Elder Nangong. "Why do you like to ask so much? Do I still need to rely on a lowly thing like the sound-transmitting talisman? I naturally have my own methods. You wouldn't understand even if I told you this." "Alright, then you just said that you want me to record the heavenly treasures." Elder Nangong could not get an answer from Xiao Chen, so he could only reply in a somewhat sullen manner. When he thought about how he had to steal the medicinal ingredients for the person who injured him, his mood became extremely gloomy. "You don't have to feel too bad. In return for the medicinal ingredients you gave me, I can help you restore the broken meridians and acupoints in your body, as well as all the injuries I caused, back to their original state." Xiao Chen could hear Elder Nangong's hesitation. He didn't bother to scare him anymore and directly threw out his most important bargaining chip. What? Is what you said true? Elder Nangong was instantly shocked and said in disbelief, "But I have never heard of a case where the meridians were broken to this extent could still be cured." Recently, Elder Nangong had already tried many heavenly treasures in the sect and also invited many famous doctors to diagnose him. However, his injuries did not improve at all. After those famous doctors diagnosed his injuries, they also gave the verdict that he could not be cured. Elder Nangong was completely disheartened and wanted to give up treatment. He did not expect that Xiao Chen would give him hope at this time. He could not help but worry about his gains and losses. Just because you haven't heard of it doesn't mean that there are no such cases. Xiao Chen added indifferently, "If you don't believe me, you might as well ask about Burning Sky Sect's Gong Ruidong. Not long ago, his old leg injury was cured by me. This. If exalted immortal Xiao doesn't mind, why don't you give me a little more time? Elder Nangong struggled for a long time and then said with a trembling voice, wait for me to confirm Gong Ruidong's situation, then, all right. Before Elder Nangong could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by Xiao Chen's voice in his ear, you better hurry up. This exalted immortal is in a good mood recently, which is why I am giving you this rare opportunity. Do not waste my good intentions. All right, I will go investigate immediately. Elder Nangong did not think that Xiao Chen would really agree to his request. He was overjoyed and responded a few times. Xiao Chen made a sound of, oh, and did not respond anymore. Elder Nangong waited for a while in fear and trepidation, but the room was still silent. Only then did he determine that exalted immortal Xiao would not send another sound transmission. He could not be bothered to sleep and climbed up from the ground. After hurriedly putting on his clothes, he went out and woke one of his subordinates up from his sleep. Facing his confused subordinate, Elder Nangong sternly ordered him to immediately inquire about the Burning Heavens faction's Grand Elder Gong Ruidong's latest news. Furthermore, Elder Nangong had specially instructed his subordinate to understand the cause and effect of the investigation. Not a single detail could be left out. Furthermore, he had to report all the information he obtained to Elder Nangong as soon as possible. After being yelled at by Elder Nangong, the subordinate who was originally still sleepy had also woken up. Naturally, he did not dare to delay and immediately accepted the order. After a simple packing, he immediately set off. Looking at the back of his subordinate hurriedly leaving, Elder Nangong finally let out a sigh of relief. He returned to his room uneasily and sat on the bed in a daze. A glimmer of light gradually emerged in his heart. Elder Nangong could clearly feel that after his cultivation was crippled, the Profound Cloud sect leader gradually began to not pay much attention to him. Although the sect leader allowed him to use medicinal herbs to treat him, his usual attitude towards him had gradually become cold. Elder Nangong guessed that if it was not for the fact that he had made some outstanding contributions to the sect and some special reasons, if he was just an ordinary disciple, the sect leader might have already kicked him out of the sect. However, right now, Xiao Chen's generous promise was undoubtedly like a life-saving straw, causing Elder Nangong to be extremely excited. If the subordinate he sent out could confirm that Gong Ruidong was indeed cured by Xiao Chen, then no matter how great the price he had to pay, he must firmly grasp this rare opportunity. If Xiao Chen could really cure her, then she would be able to restore her prestige in the sect. Then, all the grudges and unwillingness between the two of them could be written off in one stroke. The medicinal herbs that Xiao Chen mentioned, it would not be a problem for him to hand over with both hands. Chapter 1480. As the saying goes, speed is of the essence in war. While Elder Nangong was waiting anxiously, the disciple of the Profound Cloud sect only spent one day to reach the Wuxia county where the Burning Sky faction was located. Relying on the powerful network of the Profound Cloud sect, he quickly found out that Gong Ruidong had indeed gone berserk during cultivation, causing her blood to flow in reverse, causing her meridians to be broken and becoming a cripple. Furthermore, there were a lot of witnesses, so it could not be faked. This was because Gong Ruidong had specially found many doctors to diagnose him. However, everyone's conclusion was that his injuries were too serious and could not be cured. It was estimated that he would not be able to stand up again in this lifetime. After the Yun Xian sect disciple asked all kinds of people in the Wuxia county, he had a rough idea in his heart. He then turned around and snuck into the Burning Sky faction silently. However, after entering the Burning Sky faction, the scene that he saw made him endlessly shocked. He saw Gong Ruidong in the plaza giving guidance to the disciples' cultivation in high spirits, walking here and there with large strides. His figure was extremely nimble, and he didn't look like someone who would be permanently disabled. The Yun Xian sect disciple looked at the scene in front of him in shock. He could not believe his eyes. When he came back to his senses, he finally remembered Elder Nangong's instructions. He hurriedly left the Burning Sky faction and returned to the inn where he was staying. After returning to the inn, the Yun Xian sect disciple did not even have time to stick his butt to the chair. He immediately took out the sound-transmitting amulet to contact Elder Nan Gong and reported everything in detail. Elder Nan Gong, who had not slept for the whole night, listened to his subordinate's report. He did not know whether he was surprised or happy. He stood there in a daze for a while before grabbing the list of medicinal ingredients that Xiao Chen had asked for. He turned around and walked towards the direction of the medicine room. Elder Nan Gong's position in the Yun Xian sect was originally very high. In addition, he was also healing himself. Therefore, when he asked for all kinds of strange medicinal ingredients, the disciple in charge of the medicine room did not suspect much. After letting him simply register, he obediently handed over all the medicinal ingredients with both hands. After receiving the medicinal ingredients, Elder Nan Gong did not say much to the others. He directly left the mountain gate and went straight to the inn that Xiao Chen had mentioned before in the Yaoxian county. Dong dong dong. At this very moment, Xiao Chen was leisurely waiting in the inn for Elder Nan Gong to deliver the herbs to him. When he heard the knocking on the door, he first spread out his spiritual sense to check the surroundings. After confirming that the visitor was indeed Elder Nan Gong and that there were no other suspicious people lying in ambush nearby, he nodded to Hongzhu and opened the door with his spiritual sense. That. Exalted Immortal Xiao, Miss Hong, good morning. When Elder Nan Gong saw the door open by itself, he panicked a little. He quickly put on a smiling face and tiptoed into the room. He closed the door gently and respectfully greeted the two of them. He conveniently placed the bundle in his hand on the table. You came? Have you brought all the heavenly treasures that I've told you about? Xiao Chen glanced at Elder Nan Gong indifferently and asked unhurriedly. I've brought them. Elder Nan Gong immediately answered. He then carefully opened the bundle on the table and carefully took out every single heavenly treasure and piled them on the table. He did not forget to introduce them one by one. Look, this is the flaming mist lotus, that is the tranquilizing demon emperor flower, and this is the blood lingji star leaf grass. Not long after, the medicinal ingredients that Elder Nan Gong brought filled the entire table. He only stopped when he had taken out all the heavenly treasures from the bundle. He said with a humble expression, Exalted Immortal Xiao, the medicinal ingredients that you've asked me to bring are all here. They have all been lost. You can count them yourself. There shouldn't be any mistakes. There's no need for that. I still have some trust in you. Since you said there's no mistake, then there's definitely no mistake. Xiao Chen waved his hand casually. He did not even look at the dazzling array of heavenly treasures on the table. He said lazily, all right, there's nothing else for you to do. You can go back first. Elder Nan Gong was taken aback. He did not leave immediately. Instead, he awkwardly rubbed his hands together and squeezed out a smile. He asked weakly, Exalted Immortal Xiao, didn't you say that as long as I have the medicinal ingredients that you need, you will heal my injuries? Since I've brought all these things for you, do you think? What's the hurry? In any case, you won't die for a while. Xiao Chen glared at Elder Nan Gong. He stood up and walked to the table. He quickly put away the heavenly treasures and put them into his own bag as if nothing had happened. But this, that. Elder Nan Gong was a little dumbfounded. Looking at Xiao Chen's attitude, could it be that he was going to turn his back on him after he had obtained the heavenly treasures? Now that he had lost his cultivation, there was nothing he could do even if Xiao Chen wanted to renege on his promise. Xiao Chen did not care too much about Elder Nan Gong's thoughts. He just wanted to try out the heavenly treasures and see if they were useful. If the medicinal effects were insufficient or if there were any problems, he could ask Elder Nan Gong to bring more over. However, when Xiao Chen turned his head and saw that Elder Nan Gong was about to cry, he could only shake his head helplessly and explain, What are you thinking about? Won't I need time to brew the medicine for you? Just wait obediently. I'll finish brewing the medicine for you later. Wait, 3 days later, you can come back to get it. This. All right. Then I'll wait for your good news. Elder Nangong's heart relaxed slightly. He forced a smile and nodded in agreement. Elder Nangong originally thought that after handing over all the heavenly treasures to Xiao Chen, he would be able to help him heal. He did not expect that he would have to wait for a few more days. Although it had been delayed for a few days, at least Xiao Chen had given him a definite answer. It was not like what Elder Nangong thought that Xiao Chen would burn the bridge after crossing it. Right now, Elder Nangong could only choose to leave first. After all, his fate was still in the hands of Xiao Chen. No matter what Xiao Chen said, he had to do as he was told. There was no room for negotiation. However, Elder Nangong did not directly return to the Xianyan sect. After leaving Xiao Chen's room, he immediately went to the innkeeper of the inn. He also booked a room in the inn. He planned to go to Xiao Chen's place as soon as possible in 3 days, so that he would not have to make a trip to the Xianyan sect. Elder Nangong's actions were clearly seen by Xiao Chen through the divine sense imprint. However, he was too lazy to care about this old man's thoughts. If he wanted to wait, then wait. Chapter 1481. After closing the door to his room, he began to take out the heavenly treasures of the cultivation world one by one. He also took out the medicinal herbs he had brought from the inner martial world and placed them on the table. Then, he mixed the two together. Hongzhu smiled as she nestled against Xiao Chen's side. She curiously watched his movements and asked with great interest, "Husband, will you be able to quickly level up after eating these medicinal herbs? Do you want Big Sister to catch a first maiden for you? Perhaps the medicinal herbs will be even more effective when paired with a first maiden. Why do you always want me to do that with a first maiden? Are you addicted to it?" Xiao Chen unhappily rolled his eyes at Hongzhu. Then, he began to rummage around the room for something. "Husband Xiao Chen, what are you looking for? Tell Big Sister will help you look for it." Hongzhu curiously asked when she saw Xiao Chen's actions. "I'm looking for a vessel to boil medicine in." Xiao Chen rummaged for a while but was unable to find a suitable substitute. So, he casually instructed, "Since you want to help, you might as well borrow a cauldron from the inn's waiter. After the medicine is boiled, you can drink some of it as well. It will be of great help to raise your cultivation." I want to drink it too." "Then do you have enough for yourself?" Hongzhu blinked her eyes and earnestly asked, "Why don't I let you drink all of it? In any case, Big Sister is already a nascent soul expert. It doesn't matter even if I level up a little slower. Don't I still have you to protect me? It's fine. There are so many medicinal herbs. It's enough for the two of us to drink." It was as if Xiao Chen had already seen through Hongzhu's thoughts. He did not accept her kindness and instead rubbed her head with a confident look on his face. Then. "All right then. Wait a moment, I'll go borrow a cauldron." Hongzhu curled his lips, shot a glare at Xiao Chen, walked out of the door, called over a waiter, gave him a few spirit crystals, and instructed him to buy a clay pot specially used to boil medicine, as well as a pot of hot water. When everything was ready, Xiao Chen put the treasures into the clay pot one by one according to the order. Then, he condensed a samadhi true fire in his palm. He put the clay pot on his palm and slowly stewed it. His eyes stared at the red bottom of the pot without blinking, but he had mixed feelings in his heart. Back then, when he had just been kicked out of the Xiao family, he couldn't even afford a 300 yuan electric pot. If it wasn't for Yi Xiaoye's kindness and generosity in giving him a pot, he might really be at his wit's end. A hero is no man without money. Looking back at the present, now that he had the strength, he didn't even need to use an electric clay pot. As long as he had a container, he could directly use the samadhi true fire to boil medicine. Moreover, he could even easily judge the time and temperature. Compared to the past, he was hundreds of times happier. He didn't know how Yi Xiaoye and the others were doing in the martial arts world. Had they stabilized the morale of the Awakening Heaven sect? Was everything safe and sound? And Cheng Menjiang, Tang Tang, and the others who had entered the immortal cultivation world with him, were they all right? Where are they all? At that moment, many beautiful figures flashed through Xiao Chen's mind, and he was a little dazed for a moment. After about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, a strong medicinal fragrance drifted out of the clay pot and pervaded the whole room. It was both bitter and fragrant. Xiao Chen collected his thoughts and used his divine sense to sense the efficacy of the medicine. Estimating that it was almost done, he put away the samadhi true fire and evenly poured the medicinal liquid into 2 porcelain bowls that he had prepared earlier. After handing one of the bowls to Hongzhu, Xiao Chen casually picked up the other bowl, brought it to his mouth, and raised his head, preparing to drink the entire medicinal liquid. "Wait!" Hongzhu suddenly shouted. Xiao Chen's hand froze and he lowered his head to look at her in surprise. "That elder sister is too afraid of bitterness. Husband, you should drink a little more. This medicinal liquid doesn't smell good, and I don't want to suffer so much." Hongzhu rolled his eyes and plausibly found an excuse. Without waiting for Xiao Chen to respond, Hongzhu picked up her own bowl and carefully poured a little of the medicinal liquid into Xiao Chen's bowl. When she felt that it was about right, she closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and drank the entire medicinal liquid in her bowl. In truth, Hongzhu was not some pampered little princess, nor was she afraid of the bitter taste of this trivial medicinal liquid. She simply felt that natural treasures were not easy to come by, and the gap in strength between the two of them was quite large, so it would be better for the stronger Xiao Chen to drink more. In Hongzhu's view, it was secondary whether she wanted to improve her strength or not. In any case, whenever something happened, it would be Xiao Chen who would be the one fighting, and there would be no need for her to do anything. Xiao Chen smiled faintly. Naturally, he understood that Hongzhu was doing this for his own good. He gently pinched the tip of her nose and no longer tried to refuse. He raised the porcelain bowl in his hand and drank all of the medicinal liquid. When Hongzhu saw that Xiao Chen had drunk the entire medicinal liquid, she immediately revealed a satisfied smile and diligently cleaned up the 2 bowls. After that, she obediently sat down on a chair and waited for the medicinal liquid to take effect. After a short while, Xiao Chen suddenly felt a warm sensation in his dantian, and a strange aura began to circulate in his dantian. Xiao Chen keenly realized that this must be the effect of the medicinal liquid he had just drunk. Without delaying any further, he immediately pulled Hongzhu to sit on the bed, and the 2 of them entered into a familiar state of dual cultivation. However, contrary to Xiao Chen's expectations, perhaps because the medicinal liquid was too thick, or perhaps because too many herbs had been added, the medicinal effect was very slow to take effect. The 2 of them did not eat or drink, and instead cultivated wholeheartedly for 2 days and 1 night before the dual cultivation finally came to an end. Although the cultivation time was very long, the results were still very remarkable. Xiao Chen, with the foundation accumulated from the previous cultivation, smoothly advanced to the 2nd layer of the mountain opening stage, while Hongzhu's progress slowed down, and he only advanced to the 1st layer of the nascent soul stage. Even a man made of iron would not be able to endure 2 whole days of cultivation without sleep or rest. After Xiao Chen and Hongzhu finished their dual cultivation, they were no longer in the mood to be lovey-dovey. They did not even have time to eat, and immediately fell asleep. The 2 of them slept for several more hours, from dusk until the morning of the 3rd day. Only then did they slowly recover. After waking up, they lazily lay on the bed, not wanting to get up for the time being. Hongzhu had helped Xiao Chen successfully advance to the next layer, and had a good sleep. At this moment, her face was glowing, and she was full of energy. She was also in a very good mood. She gently leaned on Xiao Chen's shoulder, and said with a charming smile, "Husband Xiao Chen, since it's still early, why don't we, immortal Xiao, are you awake?" Before Hongzhu could finish speaking, Elder Nangong's impatient voice came from outside, followed by a few knocks on the door. Chapter 1482. Elder Nangong patiently waited in the inn for 3 days. From time to time, he would go out to see if there was any activity in Xiao Chen's room. He thought that if Heavenly Immortal Xiao or Hong Zhu came out, he could go over and ask around. He did not expect that after 3 whole days, Heavenly Immortal Xiao and Hong Zhu actually did not come out even once. Elder Nangong almost suspected that the two of them had directly escaped through the window. With great difficulty, it was finally the 3rd day. Elder Nangong naturally woke up early in the morning. After stuffing some breakfast into his mouth, he immediately ran over to look for Xiao Chen to treat his injuries. Hearing Nangong's knock, Hong Zhu's smile immediately froze on her face. She suspected that Gong Xiaoxi and Elder Nangong were doing this on purpose. They always chose the most appropriate time to look for Xiao Chen. They were clearly deliberately trying to anger her. Xiao Chen did not know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Hong Zhu's angry and hateful little face. He lightly patted her head, shook his head, and got up to put on his clothes. Xiao. Heavenly Immortal Xiao. Elder Nangong called out tentatively. His heart began to beat like a drum. Could it be that the two of them had really escaped like I thought? I'm up. Aren't you annoying? Why are you knocking on my door so early in the morning? Hong Zhu impatiently jumped up from the bed and yelled at the door. Elder Nangong trembled from the yell. However, when he knew that Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu had not left, he finally felt as if a huge stone had been lifted from his heart. Hong Zhu finished putting on her clothes. When she saw that Xiao Chen was still cleaning up the medicinal dregs, she angrily went to open the door. Then, she fiercely glared at Elder Nangong outside and angrily said, "Didn't I tell you to wait for my notice? You don't know the rules at all. How preposterous, humph. This. I'm sorry, Miss Hong. I was indeed a little rash." Elder Nangong could not raise his head after being scolded by Hong Zhu. He felt a little guilty and secretly blamed himself for being too impulsive and directly knocking on the door so early in the morning. He had offended Heavenly Immortal Xiao's Dao companion. If he did not handle it well, Heavenly Immortal Xiao might not treat his injuries anymore. "Alright, what are you still standing there foolishly for? Come in and get the medicine." Xiao Chen finished packing the medicinal dregs into a small bag. When he raised his head and saw that Elder Nangong was still standing at the entrance, he spoke with a mixture of anger and amusement. "Ah. Okay. Elder Nangong came back to his senses, hastily responded, and quickly walked into the room. In his haste, he nearly tripped over the door sill, causing Hong Zhu to roll his eyes at him. Xiao Chen put the bag of herbal dregs on the table, then he found some natural treasures from the inner Wulin and put them in the bag as well. Then he put the bag in front of Elder Nangong and said lightly, "This is it. Take it back." According to the normal method of decocting the medicine, he should be able to recover after drinking it 3 to 4 times. Elder Nangong hesitated for a moment and did not immediately go to get the medicine. Instead, he carefully asked, "That Exalted Immortal Xiao, may I ask, why, does it seem like there are some medicinal dregs in here?" "Oh, this is where you don't understand. In my prescription, there are some medicinal ingredients that need to be decocted first before they can be used. There are also some ingredients that must be fresh." Xiao Chen's expression did not change as he fabricated a story. "If you don't believe me, you can go and ask Gong Ruidong. When I treated him, did I also use the same medicinal dregs? If it was normal, then why would it be unique? No need. Of course I believe in Exalted Immortal Xiao's divine healing skills." Elder Nangong hurriedly waved his hand and flattered with a flattering smile. "It's good that you believe me." Xiao Chen glanced at him and asked indifferently, "Do you have any other questions?" "No, there's nothing else. Thank you, Exalted Immortal Xiao, for the medicine." Elder Nangong hurriedly picked up the medicinal ingredients on the table and happily stuffed them into his clothes as if he had found a treasure. Although he had never heard of the saying that medicinal ingredients needed to be decocted first before they would be effective, since exalted immortal Xiao had said so, he could only choose to believe him. Anyway, the result would not be any worse. At most, he could only make a desperate attempt. After keeping the medicinal ingredients, Elder Nangong only wanted to go back and drink the medicine to heal his injuries. He respectfully said to Xiao Chen, "Exalted immortal Xiao, if there's nothing else, then I'll first, don't be in a hurry to leave." Xiao Chen interrupted Elder Nangong's words and found a seat to sit down. He said slowly, "I still have something to ask you." Elder Nangong was stunned for a moment. He did not know what Xiao Chen was going to do, but he did not dare to turn around and leave. He could only obediently stand where he was and wait for exalted immortal Zhao's instructions. Xiao Chen was in no hurry. He first picked up the cup of tea that Hong Zhu had just poured for him and drank it in one gulp. Then, he casually wiped his mouth with his sleeve and looked at Elder Nangong calmly. He said, "Previously at the Burning Sky faction, when I asked you about the situation with the bandits, you seem to have hidden some things?" Elder Nangong's expression changed slightly. He thought that Xiao Chen did not notice this matter. He did not expect that it had already fallen into his eyes. He could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth in embarrassment. "When we were at the bandit headquarters, I did not wait for you to be honest." Xiao Chen did not look at Elder Nangong. He looked at the empty teacup in his hand and said in a seemingly casual manner, "Now that I have already given you the panacea to heal your injuries, shouldn't you explain the situation to me?" Of course, of course." Elder Nangong smiled embarrassedly and scratched his head. He said, "Actually, it is not a big deal. There was a time when I went out to help the Profound Cloud sect with a mission. In a moment of carelessness, I fell into the enemy's trap and was attacked by several people at the same time. As a result, I was seriously injured. I did not want to tell you at the time because I was worried that I would lose face if I told you about it, so, and then?" Xiao Chen could not be bothered to listen to Elder Nangong's explanation. He only wanted to know the relationship between him and the bandits. "Later on, my luck was not bad. After much difficulty, I found an opportunity to escape from their encirclement." Elder Nangong explained in full detail. "However, I was already seriously injured at the time and my life was in danger. In the darkness, I entered an unfamiliar place. Fortunately, the owner of that place was an expert. Not only did he not blame me for trespassing, he even kindly saved my life. It seems that you are not fated to die. The expert who saved you is the young master of the bandits, right?" Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows and asked. However, as soon as he asked, he remembered that the person who owed him a favor was called the Big Boss. It should be the father of the young master. "No, he is the big boss of the bandits." Elder Nangong shook his head and added, "At that time, he gave me a kind of medicine, but I didn't expect it to have such an immediate effect. My injuries healed just like that, and I even successfully broke through to the Profound Ascension stage." Chapter 1483. "Oh. There's actually such a good thing? You were already on the verge of death. What medicine was so miraculous that it could actually save your life? Could it be that it was the same medicine I gave you?" Hearing this, Xiao Chen's interest was piqued and he couldn't help but ask curiously. Xiao Chen actually didn't suspect that Elder Nangong was lying. There were definitely many strange people hidden in the cultivation world. Wasn't the Elder Heaven Ancestor one of them? Among them, there was someone who could bring someone back from the dead with a life-saving medicine that could regenerate the flesh and bones of the dead. It's not this kind. At that time, he gave me a white transparent medicine. Elder Nangong recalled for a while and his eyes suddenly lit up. He stretched out his finger and gestured in the air, "That's right. He used a tube that was about this long. That strange tube was filled with a transparent potion, and then it was connected to a hollow needle that could inject the potion into my body. After I used the potion, it didn't take long for me to recover." Tube? Hollow needle? Xiao Chen was very astonished as he repeated. According to Elder Nangong's description, using a needle and a tube to inject medicine into the body. Wasn't that the same as injections in the secular world's hospitals? He was very familiar with this thing, but it shouldn't appear in the cultivation world. How could there be people doing this kind of thing in such an ancient place? This was too strange. With a head full of question marks, Xiao Chen couldn't help but sink into deep thought. Who was this person? Who brought those syringes and needles from the secular world into the cultivation world? From the looks of it, this bandit group was indeed a bit strange. If it was just an insignificant bandit group, it shouldn't be related to the secular world at all. That great master actually had such a deep understanding of the secular world. He was even familiar with how to use it. There must be a problem here. Xiao Chen thought about it again. Apart from this bandit group, that immortal cultivation chamber of commerce also faintly revealed the shadow of the secular world. There were contracts all over the place. Could it be that there was another passage in the cultivation world that led directly to the secular world? Otherwise, why would there be so many inexplicable connections? Yes, a relatively small and hard tube, about this long, and the needle. Elder Nangong wanted to describe a few more words, but he was interrupted by Xiao Chen. I understand. Xiao Chen waved his hand and thought for a while. Then, he asked cautiously, then, this expert, who is also the great master, was originally so kind that he offered to treat you? No, that's not it. Elder Nangong shook his head with a bitter smile and explained, at that time, he said that he wanted to treat me, but the price was to use me as an experiment. After injecting the medicine into me through that tube, he needed to observe the situation. So, the drug he used is actually a new one that hasn't been tested? A thought suddenly flashed through Xiao Chen's mind like a spark. He thought of something, but when he wanted to recall it again, the light had already disappeared without a trace. It should be. Elder Nangong nodded and said, the great master told me that if I recovered safely after using the medicine, I could leave on my own. If I didn't recover completely, I had to stay with him and continue the treatment until I was cured. Xiao Chen didn't say anything. He added in his heart, it could also be until I die. This time, Elder Nangong seemed to understand what Xiao Chen was thinking. He sighed and said, at that time, I also suspected that it might be a trap. But since I was about to die, I might as well risk my life to accompany him in this experiment. Anyway, even if I didn't agree, the result would still be death. So, after using that medicine, you recovered directly? You didn't stay any longer? Xiao Chen stared at Elder Nangong and asked. Yes, not only did I recover from my injuries, but I also increased my cultivation level. Elder Nangong nodded and said frankly, just as he said, the great master didn't ask me to stay any longer, so I left just like that. However, I also owed him a favor. At that time, I promised him that if he needed my help, he could contact me at any time. That's why I met you, exalted immortal Xiao. Naturally, Xiao Chen knew what happened after that. He thought for a while and asked again, oh, the great master and the young master, what did they look like? Do you know their names? Exalted immortal Xiao, this is too difficult for me. Elder Nangong's face fell and he said helplessly, I was seriously injured at that time, so my consciousness was completely muddled. I didn't even see the great master's face clearly. As for the young master, although I saw him once, his face seemed to be injured. Other than his eyes, his entire face was covered with gauze, so I didn't know what he looked like. As for their names, I didn't ask, what Elder Nangong said was the truth. Back then, he was surrounded and attacked. Although he escaped, his life was in danger and he was unconscious most of the time. After he was saved, Elder Nangong was taken care of by the great master's subordinates. After he recovered, he left on his own. His conversations with the great master were also passed on through his subordinates. He didn't have a deep relationship with the great master. Forget it. You don't seem to know anything. Even if you remember, you probably won't be able to explain. Xiaofan waved his hand and didn't want to continue asking about this. He thought for a while and asked in his sea of consciousness, by the way, Elder Heaven Ancestor, where is the specific location of the mystic realm you mentioned? Nangong is also here, so I can ask him about the route. That's hard to say. It's been a few thousand years since then. The names of the places are different from before, so it's even more difficult to find the way. Elder Heaven Ancestor's answer disappointed Xiaofan, but he didn't give up. He continued to ask, what was the name of the place? Maybe I can ask Nangong and he'll know. Oh. That place is called Blue Sky Valley. Elder Heaven Ancestor's tone was very solemn. The entire valley is filled with poisonous fog. There are many rare spiritual beasts living there. Those spiritual beasts are extremely intelligent and don't fear the poisonous fog at all. Some even use the poisonous fog to cultivate themselves and are very powerful. Xiaofan nodded slightly and looked up at Elder Nangong, who was standing there with a smile on his face. He pretended to say casually, by the way. You should have heard of Blue Sky Valley, right? I plan to go to that place to take a look in a few days. Do you know how to get there from Yaoxian County? Blue Sky Valley? Elder Nangong frowned and repeated. He looked a little confused.